back, starting on our long-term plan hearings, so page 233 of our agenda, and I'll hand over to you, Phil.
Tēnā koutou katoa, tēnei te mihi kia koutou. Thanks for that, Lynn. Thanks also for the opportunity to talk to you all this morning, and in particular, allowing me the flexibility to do it over Zoom. As you can imagine, being a regional organisation, we do 8 of these presentations, and I've got another 2 that I need to do today on this side of the hill. We've looked at your long-term plan through a physical activity lens, including how Masterton can become an active town where movement is integrated into everyday life and everything that people do. We think that there are some great opportunities for Masterton to think about and incorporate active design principles into the proposed civic and town centre. Before I go any further, I'd just like to dispel, I guess, a little bit of a myth that sits around the relationship and the partnership that we have with councils. At the moment, and certainly over the last financial year, funding flows both ways. Traditionally, the model was we as a partner of yours would come to you and you would support us through funding. By way of example, over the last financial year, Nuku Ora has funded directly into Masterton, into your town, $180,000. Indirectly, we've funded another $148,000 into a variety of initiatives that spread themselves across the Wairarapa region. And an example there is some funding that we provided for the YMCA Central to support some programs around tamariki and rangatahi. Just some brief comments around the sector challenges. These have been quite visible, and you would know a lot about it as a result of COVID and the impact, particularly on funding for organisations through some of those more traditional avenues such as Class 4 gaming money. The cost to run and participate in sport remains a significant concern to the sector. Continual fee increases, increasing inequity in the ability to pay, and that, as I've said, has been heightened by the impacts of COVID-19, and a shrinking revenue pool poses challenges for your sport, recreation and play organisations. Increasing fees and access to quality facilities are key issues for the sector. There is a tipping point for fee increases where the cost of sport is put out of reach to so many in the community. I'd just like to offer a few comments now specifically in relation to our funding request through the LTP. And that funding request is for a dedicated resource to support the implementation of the Regional Spaces and Places Plan. That Spaces and Places Plan was endorsed by chief executives and the mayoral forum across the region in December 2019. We're proposing a shared role across councils, that role would reside here at Nuku Ora. The purpose of the role is to guide the implementation of the Regional Spaces and Places Plan through working alongside local authority partners and investors and user groups such as Masterton District Council. The role will also provide a regional view on facility developments, ensuring that new facility developments and redevelopments are aligned to the principles identified in the regional plan. The role will also provide support and advice to facility development partners to ensure that the regional plan outcomes are met. And lastly, it will work alongside your council staff and provide support to their work, including connecting with the sector and Sport New Zealand on facility matters. Additionally, it's proposed that progress reports against the regional plan will be provided to council chief executives and to their respective regional forum and mayoral forums. We're asking for your consideration for a contribution of $4,000 on an annual basis for the next 3 years to support the role that will coordinate the implementation of the Spaces and Places Plan across the wider Wellington region. This $4,000 is additional to the $25,000 that we receive on an annual basis from Masterton District Council to support the work that we do in your town. Lynn, that's all the comments I want to make. I'm really happy to take any questions that people may have.
Okay, thank you, Phil. So I'll just open up the floor if anybody's got any questions.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Okay, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Phil. Can you give me examples of tangible ways in which you've been able to help and support schools? Because that's going to give you a lot of access to the people who don't necessarily have access to some of the facilities that you're talking about.
Yep. So there is a program that has been funded across 3 ministries, across health, education and Sport NZ as a Crown entity, and that's the Healthy Active Learning program. Funding has been allocated last year to Nuku Ora to work with decile 1 to 4 schools to enable I guess the students, tamariki in particular, to benefit from that level of investment through, in our lens, an increased opportunity for physical activity. So we are working with, and I don't have the list in front of me, but I will gladly provide it to you, across the schools that we are working with in the Wairapa and in Masterton in order to enable healthy active learning to come to life for schools. What we've found is that the principles associated with healthy active learning are at the core of the work that we want to address anyway. The inequities of access to physical activity, to recreation and to sport, and to enable these young people to start creating those early, very early habits.
Thank you, Phil. Councillor Gear.
Phil, thanks for your presentation. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
You mentioned a lot of the targeting for young people. Is there anything for older people to remain active?
Yeah. So as an organisation, our priority is working with tamariki and rangatahi. And when you break that down, it's about enabling people who are less active to become more active, or those who are inactive to become active. What that does is it gives us a pretty clear focus around the work we do. However, when we go into a community and engage with that community and hear from that community what it is the community needs from us, we are finding that the older generations also need that work. One of the programs that we deliver in that area quite specifically is a strength and balance program, which is funded by ACC, and that enables us to work with older adults, particularly around enabling them to remain active in a sense that they limit, I guess, the falls that they might have as they get older. So certainly there's one example. Another example is we run a seniors regional games, which is a huge success. First year we ran it in Lower Hutt in partnership with a number of councils. This last year, we ran it at the ASB Centre in Kilburnie. So they are 2 examples of the work that we would do outside that particular focus we have around tamariki and rangatahi.
Thank you, Phil. Councillor Ryan.
Are you still involved in the green prescription program?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And we have that contract with the Wairapa DHB. We're looking at the success that we've built around that program by working with the DHB to see where and how we can work beyond perhaps what the boundaries of that first contract might have looked like. Don't know what that looks like yet, but we see that being a connection into the first question I had around, what is it that we're doing in that school space? Well, we want to link the work, because we find that there's probably a pupil in a school, decile 1 to 4, who will be receiving some support through the Healthy Active Learning program, but then later on in the afternoon, that individual or that individual's whānau will be receiving support through green prescription. So it's about reconciling some of that.
Okay, if there's no further, Councillor Johnson.
Just a question, your funding request for the Spaces and Places plan, have you also approached South Wairapa and Carterton District Council?
So we've approached all councils in the region, all 8 councils, and across a population distribution model, we are seeking funding from all councils based around that population distribution equation. An example would be is that we have yesterday presented to Wellington City Council, and their portion of this is just short of $40,000.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil, and it was good to have a chat with your staff a week or so ago, and just to acknowledge and well done on the strategy 2032. So I know it's been a big change for your organisation, and you've undergone a lot of changes, and you're very much future focused. So I just wanted to add that comment at the end, as we were unable to meet through those circumstances. So thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Lynn. And I'm just a heads up. So we're talking to the combined council next Monday. We've got a 20-minute slot where we're going to bring on board councillors as to who is Nukuora, what is the core work that we do in the Wairarapa region, how might we do some things differently in the future through a combined approach across councils.
Oh, that'll be good. Okay, look forward to that. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
I just wanted to apologise to Councillor McClymont and Councillor Peterson. I didn't realise I'd started the meeting a few minutes early, so apologies for that. Okay, so we welcome John and Marguerite for the Riversdale Ratepayers Association on page 327. So it's 7 minutes. You can come up and take a seat. 7 minutes to talk to your presentation. 3 minutes for us to ask questions. The bell will go at 6 minutes. Just you can assume and take for granted that we have read your submission, so you don't need to read it out again, but you can highlight the points from it, and I'm sure you will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you directly today. Last year was Zoom and it didn't work too well. So, as you've seen from the background material that we sent in, the beach is growing and thriving. I'm sure if you travel the road out to the beach about 7:30 in the morning, you'll see all the tradesmen and building supply companies headed out that way. So we think that the locals at Riversdale are certainly pumping a few dollars into the Masterton economy. As a community, we pride ourselves on doing as much as we can for ourselves. And again, I'm sure you'll be aware of some of the things that the community have provided. But there are some things that are outside of our control or our capability. Late last year, Council gave us the opportunity to send in some ideas while the long-term plan was being put together, and we asked for three things: tidy up and development of what we consider the eyesore called Bodal Reserve Drive, and that's the first thing most visitors to the beach see. Lots of comments about it. And the other thing we asked for was that something be done to the road edges of the northern section of Blue Pacific. So that's what we sent in late last year. We got the long-term plan documentation, we went through it with a fine-tooth comb, looking for the word Riversdale, didn't find anything, and so that's why we made a separate submission that you've received, which is 3 questions we would like to get some answers to eventually. In the meantime, we've had since we submitted to the long-term plan, we've had 2 emails from Council related specifically to the submission of the information we sent through in December last year. One of the responses was from the corporate planner. With respect, as long as I can find a piece of paper, there's a paragraph in there that I'd like to read to you because I think that's a concern of ours. So, quoting from the email, a master plan for the beach resort will be used in identifying needs and prioritising work at Riversdale. Staff are aware there are 2 very different views within the Riversdale community regarding urbanisation. Just a point of issue, that was true 15 years ago. Everybody at the beach has accepted the terraces took place and Riversdale will never be what it was in the 60s and 70s. It then goes on to say, this is a matter to be considered through the Wairarapa Combined District Plan review process. Given decisions made through that process will influence the management plan, the Riversdale Beach Management Plan review will be deferred until the WCDP review is complete. Frankly, we think that's a bit of a cop-out. That's kind of council saying to us, nothing's going to happen at Riversdale of any significance for 2 or 3 years. We, by the way, 18 months ago provided some input at a request of council when that review of the management plan was going to be done. We've also received a response on the front of the natives of the Southern Reserve, which is one of the questions we've asked. This confirms our worry that while council have publicly committed to this planting taking place this year, no application for government funding has been submitted to date. We see this as a wasted opportunity given the various funds the government had announced post-COVID. The leader goes on to state, and I'm paraphrasing, that with a bit of luck, it might be possible to undertake this planting in 2023. Just on that score, in the meantime, local volunteers have put hundreds of hours into repairing the damage to the tracks in the area where the pine trees came from, and they are fully operational. So today is our chance to raise our concerns directly with you as our elected representatives, and the 3 questions we asked in our submission still remain. Boat driver scruffy and an accident continuing to happen. Especially over the summer, the surf club is regularly having to administer first aid, especially to children when they trip and fall. And by the way, I thought I'd bring a prop. This is what we're talking about. I'll leave it with you because I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be happy with my grandchildren falling on that. The same can be said for Blue Pacific Parade, only the accident has the potential to be far more serious. This part of the road is narrow, has no footpath, and has a very high vehicle and pedestrian traffic at peak times. I have a little anecdote there, but my not so friendly friends at the time, they put it in the paper this morning. I saw this happen right in front of me. I pulled out to let a little child give room. Mum yelled out to the child, "Be careful." She pulled to the left, went into one of the potholes that we're talking about, fell off a bike. All I can say is I'll leave it you to imagine if she'd fallen the other way. It's quite anecdotally, this isn't the only incident that happened. Aesthetics apart, both Odell Drive and Blue Pacific are serious accidents waiting to happen, and hence we're taking this opportunity to bring this to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So, any questions of councillors? Questions? Councillor Holmes and Councillor Ryan.
John, who got the money for the pine trees?
Council, as I understand it.
You referred to who's about the government funding that's available for native planting. Is the Residents Association considered applying in their own right?
No, we haven't at this point, for the simple reason that when the pine trees were removed, we were given firm commitments that council would look after the replanting.
Would you apply if you had support to do so?
We would, but we see it as your responsibility, not ours. I mean, at the time, I was asked to put the ratepayer's name to a council communication that was sent out to everybody. That's where it said replanting in the winter of 2021. And we know COVID happened and all of that sort of thing, but quite seriously, the government came out with that much money post-COVID. We can't believe you didn't apply for some of it.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions? There is not. So, thank you for your submission. So the hearings are on the 2nd of June and the deliberations, 2nd of June, open to the public. So that's when we provide some responses to your submission. So thanks very much for coming along. Thank you.
I'm going to leave that there because I think you should have a look at it and some photographs.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, John. Thanks, Moberly. Okay, we've got feedback. So
Well, probably,
we'll just wait for the next. Just gonna
probably ask the question.
Everybody, the Federated Farmers may be running behind time, but as Margaret has arrived, and that's submission number one on page 109. Margaret, if you'd like to come forward and you can take a seat at the front there. And your husband as well, if he wants to join you. You hold a hand, okay. So, welcome. Oops.
Glasses.
Yeah, I know that feeling. So welcome to our long-term plan hearings. So you can speak for 7 minutes and then we allow 3 minutes for us to ask any questions. A bell will ring at 6 minutes. So thank you very much, and we've read your submission, but you may speak to it and highlight any key areas. Thank you.
My name's Margaret Davis, and I decided to just write this in a slightly different way, so I'll read it as I've written it. The Masterton Council District Long-Term Plan is titled Stepping Up for Our Mokopuna. Underneath the title, 3 priorities are listed. They are funding for a new civic centre, revamping Masterton, and more housing for seniors. So where are our mokopuna in these 3 priorities? The message from the Mayor and the Chief Executive on page 7 states that the plan is called Stepping Up for Our Mokopuna because it's time to step up and invest in the future of our mokopuna. They ask us to think about what you want Masterton to be like for your children or grandchildren. What will they value when they're your age? They ask us to think, what will be the legacy you want to leave? In 1960, as a 5-year-old, I couldn't imagine what my life would be like in the year 2000, but I was excited. In 1980, my first son was born, and I felt optimistic for him and his future. In 2020, my first grandson was born, and this time I felt deep anxiety and apprehension about the future for him. I want to believe that he will feel excited about his future, but sadly when I talk with young people, they too share my anxiety, but they add another ingredient, anger. They are angry that we're robbing them of the same exciting future that we had to look forward to. In 2086, when he is the age I am now, the current predictions by NIWA are that this area will experience 94 hot days a year, 3 months of the year when it will be extremely uncomfortable and maybe unsafe to be outside. The hot days will be accompanied by increased drought predictions along with other severe weather events. Drought is associated with decreased air quality, so he may also face more allergies and disease risks. By 2086, he will not experience any frosts. Some may consider this a bonus, but it also increases the likelihood of making pest control difficult or impossible. Climate change will have a major impact on our natural habitat, and so a walk in the forest may be silent due to the loss of species. The forests themselves may be full of dead or dying trees that are unable to adapt to the increasing temperatures, something that ecologists and arborists are already warning of. Conjecture, I know, but a very real possibility if not enough action is done now. I do not feel proud that this will be my legacy to him. Where in the long-term plan would he find any real concrete actions being taken that could be seen to mitigate the worst of climate change effects on him and all of the other mokopuna of today? If he's able to find a copy of this document, he'll be bewildered and angry. He will legitimately ask why the council thought it was so important to spend conservatively $41 million, but highly likely to be much more, on a building which by then is unlikely to be fit for purpose and will be costly to maintain. He'll ask why the council thought a civic centre would create community when all the building did was increase the financial burden on the people who lived in Masterton. He will question if there was really a need for a conference and event centre when there was nothing to attract people to Masterton and there was another event centre 10 kilometres down the road. He will also ask why the council did not understand that most of the young people left Masterton to experience the more exciting, interesting and diverse cities of the world and to New Zealand, and only a few came back. Most did not, because small towns cannot offer the opportunities that large cities do. He will ask why the council, people of the community elected to represent them, was so short-sighted. He would notice that the plan called Stepping Up for our Mokopuna included lots of lovely pictures of children, but was devoid of plans that have been proven to improve quality of life in towns and cities, especially for children. There is no mention of how to make our busy roads safer for cycling or walking. Clean air to breathe, especially in the winter. Sports grounds and facilities and a good, affordable public transport system. You would also see that the council's planned rate increases would impose hardship on many of the people who live there, young and old, but especially those on low or fixed incomes. He would understand that increased financial pressure on families can increase the risks of family violence and breakdown, and wonder how that aligns with stepping up for our Mokopuna. He would wonder how a plan called Stepping Up for our Mokopuna could include plans that would make their lives worse. And he will read the document and notice the token Maori words, but the almost complete lack of inclusiveness in the policy and plan. This is your opportunity as a council in 2021 to make a long-term plan that truly does honour the title Stepping Up for our Mokopuna. There is still time.
Thank you, Margaret. So, is there any questions that councillors would like to ask Margaret?
I'm just wondering, Margaret, thank you for your presentation, but I wonder if we could get a copy of that.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thanks, Dave.
Is there any other? Right. And then Gary.
Hello, Margaret. Thank you very much for that presentation. Very stunning. There some Māori frequency you think might be included. I guess one that I'm thinking about is kaika. I'd rather hear it from you.
I don't really feel qualified to talk on that, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Councillor Cabell.
Margaret, thank you. Yes, tremendous stuff. Now, when you talk to the youth, what do they tell you is missing?
They tell us that we're not making them feel that the world is safe for them to move into. They know very much about the risks of climate change. They know that there are so many risks associated with them growing into this world, and that they see us as doing nothing. They see us as talking about it sometimes, not very often, but they don't see us as actually physically making plans that make that happen.
Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Margaret, fabulous presentation. The comment in the last piece is a cyclist will feel vulnerable much of the time. Could you expand on that?
I will not cross High Street. It's too busy and too dangerous, so I always have to use pedestrian crossings. There is a cycle lane of sorts along High Street, but people park in it, and then you've got to read out into the traffic, and it's so intensely full of trucks and other vehicles that it feels really scary. And if I was a child or a parent, I wouldn't feel comfortable about having my children having to cross Chapel Street or High Street. It's just too dangerous. Same in Dixon Street, there was a purpose-built cycle lane, but it crosses the big streets and people park in there. When people are coming out of car parks, like the car park by motorists goes, they move out into the cycle lane so they can see where they're going, which means that you have to go around them. And a purely practical thing, the roads are full of glass and rubbish that can punctures in the time. It's just not safe, it doesn't feel safe.
And do you cycle for recreation or do you commute for bike?
Both.
Would more off the road tracks be attractive to you?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I was talking to a man who's got children, and he cycles the other day, and he said, why don't we know? I mean, friends of ours live in the Waikato, they know that $91 million came into that area in the last couple of years, all from New Zealanders who came to cycle. What have we got here? We've got this wonderful environment that we could have cycling, except we fill it up with logging trucks that drive so close to you on the country roads, it's just dangerous.
Is there any other questions? There is none. Thank you very much, Margaret, for your submission. Thank you. Margaret, I've got to mention, we've got deliberations, public deliberations on the 2nd of June where we consider and go through and make decisions around the submissions. So you're welcome to attend that on the 2nd of June as well. Thank you. Okay, moving on now, we'll go back to page 110 and Federated Farmers. And welcome, Willie, come on forward. So, welcome, you can take it that councillors have read the comprehensive submission, and so you don't need to go through it all. So just wondered if there are a few areas that you particularly wanted to highlight. So we have 7 minutes for you to speak and 3 minutes for councillors to ask any questions.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I apologise, I'm probably going to be a slightly more bland than the previous speaker. But yeah, thank you for reading our submission and thank you for the opportunity to speak. For those of you who don't know me, my name is William Beetham. I'm a sheep and pig farmer just east of Masterton here, farming our land. We've been there for 156 years, and I'm also a National Metal Board Chair of Federated Farmers and on the National Board. Federated Farmers is a membership organisation that we have approximately just over 400 members in the Wairarapa and 12,500 national. Within our submission, we'd like to encourage the council to adopt the use of a uniform annual general charge. This mechanism at the maximum 30% shows the council understands the concept of fairness and equity where all rateable properties receive an equal benefit. Capital value rating should be used over land value rating. We also certainly reasonably happy with the targeted rating system and see that part of the system has been fair. We are concerned around the increase in proposed in dog fees for the rural areas, primarily because the rural areas don't have a large amount of issues associated with the dog, with dog issues, and most of those services go to urban areas. So we would propose that actually rather than increasing the fees for the first dog in rural areas, we would propose that it just is $28 flat fee per dog. And this would be equitable when most of those dog services are used in the urban areas. Further to that, we recognise that rural roads are used mostly by rural families and their communities, but there is significant wider benefit to the community. Our rural roads are now heavily used for recreation and transport within the urban areas, for urban areas, and we should look at, and there is also significant use now by those who are not actually ratepayers in the region, for example, the forestry industry. So we would suggest that there is an opportunity to look at funding options to reduce this burden on the rural communities and investigate a targeted forestry rate for rural roads. That's That's what I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll open it up to questions from councillors. Is there any questions? There appears to be none.
Well, I'm just gonna.
Oh, sorry.
The forestry rate. Have you any idea how many ton of forestry is coming out just in your area around, say, in the Wainuiru district the next few years?
No, we don't have any idea. I don't have any idea of the tonnage. But the scale just in the Wainuiru region has significantly changed over my time and over my father's time, to the point where we avoid at all putting stock on the roads, and especially, it's not only just the use of the actual trucks, but there's the shifting of the equipment to and from sites, and then there's the logging crews. So we have logging crews that start coming out past our place at 5 o'clock in the morning and generally start coming back at 3 o'clock as well. So there is a significant increase in one area of traffic.
Because 20 years ago, that road was upgraded by the forestry people, so that's good, yeah.
Sorry, in your excellent submission, it talks about a little bit about how we might work together in terms of council, the group that you represent, Renter Farms. I know a whole lot of ways that might be done, but I certainly would like to actually expand on that just in case there was something that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah, there's a significant amount of opportunities, but I think one of the key aspects is we have a few people within the Wairarapa who are able to provide the time to work between the rural sector and the urban sector and council governments. It's how do we expand that pool I see as a critical and enable those people to be resourced. It's good to see that the rural committee is starting to happen, but how do we get people, especially those who are a lot younger than myself, how do we allow them the time, give them the opportunity to engage in these processes? And that's across the board as an issue. Thank you.
Is there any other questions?
Well, I just found it interesting about the QE2 plan, it's something I didn't realise. So what sort of value of land is tied up in QE2? And I mean, I'm really out of the depth here, but with central government carbon credits, is there any way of offsetting this? Or, yeah, it was surprising.
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. So farmers have been extremely proactive in a lot of areas in isolating residual stands in bush-netting and growing them, and we've certainly done that on our property. There is no significant value within the current ETS framework. There is work going on through the sector called the He-Waka Economic Program, looking at how that might be accounted for on an on-farm basis. But that's a really, really difficult process, and especially when we also have charges. I'm not sure where raking charges sit for that land, but it is a big cost on farm owners just to maintain in terms of pests and invasive species to manage those areas, and we get absolutely no value for it.
Any other questions? There's appears to be not. So thank you for the submission, and we will respond to that on June 2nd through our deliberations, and we will respond to all the questions that you've asked. Yeah, so thank you very much for coming. Thanks. Okay, we've got the next one. There you go.
No one? No.
You should know that. I'm surprised that whoever made the submission didn't know that. Well, I wonder if there's another goodness, but I don't know. But it's, you don't pay, you need to have it done. That's one of the advantages of it. That's what Trevor Thompson does. They can't get shown. Trevor Thompson was the applicant.
So they haven't got carbon credits.
I reckon it's no, the current ETS doesn't allow for it.
Not as much.
arrived yet, so I've just asked Ian and Guy, Grant, if they want to step forward now, and they're happy to do so. So you please come forward into the front there. It's on page 165 of our agenda. So welcome to you, Guy, to our hearings. So 7 minutes for you to talk and 3 minutes for us to ask questions, and the bell will ring at 6 minutes. And so over to you. You can take it that councillors have read your submission, so if there's just key points that you want to make from your submission. Over to you, Bob.
What we're going to do is we do most things in a shared sort of way. And I'd just like to start by saying we know a number of you, and we greatly respect your willingness to put yourself forward and stand on the council, or be on the council. And so there's nothing personal about this, but in our view, a civic centre being seen as a priority by our council is irresponsible. Our greatest challenge is climate change, and every decision that's being made by councils and central government should consider its impact. And while the glossy brochure Stepping Up almost ignores climate change until 2024, we are told to be mindful of our past. In reality, the council's plans neither honour the past nor seem to understand the future we face. This new world of climate change and COVID is not one where we build large vanity projects, but one in which we must live with what we already have and use it more creatively and wisely. Now, I realise that several years ago there were surveys conducted, and there was general support for some kind of building. The price tag then was about, in fact, $15 million. But things have changed dramatically in the last 18 months. And we're now faced with a situation, it's not just climate change, but it's the effects of climate change. And this, of course, includes COVID. And COVID is something which, while COVID-19 might go, we're going to have a succession of other COVIDs over the next years. So I think we believe very strongly we must live with what we already have and use it more creatively. Plans for a hugely expensive civic centre makes no sense when we have entered an era of multiple crises, not just COVID, which is going to carry on for the foreseeable future from all our reading, but also another factor that's come up more recently is that the existence of the Masterton District Council for long enough to build a civic centre could even be considerably in doubt. A new civic centre will actually benefit only a small percentage of the population that's increasingly concerned about housing, rising food costs, having adequate basic infrastructure services, and fearing the inevitable rise of rates that will accompany big bills. While the council has suggested that climate change might be a problem at some point, and I know there is some material in your Stepping Up document, nevertheless, Partha Dasgupta's The Economics of Biodiversity report, which he wrote recently for the US Treasury, shows that climate change can no longer be stopped, and all our efforts must go into mitigating its inevitable effects. In the years that the council has conducted surveys about and pondered the future of the town hall, there has seemingly been little attention given to alternatives. What are the Bullman proposals for the town hall and the existing spaces, for example, the Regent Theatre and Memorial Stadium that have in the past hosted orchestras and large audiences? Instead, ignoring future challenges, and they're not actually future challenges, they're now challenges as the results, as the effects of the last 18 months have shown. There seems to be an obsession with lumping a whole lot of services and activities into one new building. And to justify this, a number of inconvenient truths seem to have been ignored. Take the library, for example. Much has been made of a statistic somewhere that says the library is not big enough for Marston's population. This may or may not be true, but the council has land beside and behind the present library and could significantly increase its size. We've been told there's waters in the basement, so the library must move. According to librarians, the basement has been damp for decades and has not hindered the library from functioning effectively. Then there's the Waipara archive, which needs to be a new and larger library. Really? The archive has been happily across the street from the main library in Queen Street with its own shop front for years, until quite arbitrarily it was ordered out some weeks ago for an earthquake risk that is so severe that the Wairarapa Building Society, which owns the building, has just repainted it. The WBS and other tenants are still there, and we understand the WBS has at least 10 years to do any required strengthening. It's certainly convenient that the archive suddenly needs a new home inside a new civic centre at the other end of town. The library was removed from the town hall in 1982 when the new building built in the centre was built in the centre of town, because that is where a public library should be, the centre of town.
We're also concerned that there's an extraordinary amount of money being projected for the revamp of the town centre. The reason given for this in the book is that it should be a place where our community connects, whether there's bumping into old friends, hanging out with mates after school, or sharing a pie or a coffee, which is what we put in our submission. It's actually a fairly accurate description of Masterton today. Another reason given earlier for a revamp was that it would attract more visitors. But in the school holidays, and we live in Essex Street, we walk into the town quite a lot, and we have seen, especially in the school holidays, that Queen Street, the cafes, the shops, have been really bustling. And this isn't just our observation. It bears out the report in the Times Age yesterday with figures showing a 23% jump in domestic tourist spending is turning our region into one of the, quote, rock stars of the New Zealand economy. So I think that's really important to ponder on. Certainly, Ian and I think we need more trees, a few more open spaces, hopefully some of the empty shops being occupied in some way, perhaps by being made into living spaces, apartments. But ideas like bringing the park and Bruce streets and having better connections with Waipua River make little sense to us. Are people unable to cross a road to enjoy the very large and wonderful Queen Elizabeth Park? And do we want to be any better connected to the Waipua when the effects of climate change worsen, as we perhaps remember, at least it's in the books that we have produced. It has suffered, we have suffered a lot of flooding in this town from the Waipua in the past. That's why we've got stop links.
Can I just say, I think you're at near 7 minutes, but so I'm not sure if you want to allow time for questions, then but you can carry it.
It feels to now.
Oh, it seems to. Okay.
Well, I mean, we could drop this bit, but we
no.
I mean, we don't mind. I mean, questions are up to you, of course, and I know you can extend things a bit if you want to. Another of our concern are the council's communications. There have been expensive booklets and full-page newspaper advertisements about the projected changes, but a very noticeable lack of crucial information. A lack of transparency is reflected in more and more council business being conducted in workshops that the public is excluded from. We were told the council had made no decision about a new civic centre, but we know the decision was made at a public excluded meeting in December. We have been told that stepping up is a consultation opportunity to give our views, but it is after, not before the decision. Now, I know that the council will claim that it had already decided to do something like this in its last year annual plan, but the world has changed very considerably since then. The stepping up document provides two options for the projected new civic centre, but they're actually the same one with different costing methods. Significantly, the long-term feedback form inside some, but not all copies of the stepping up glossy provided a third option, no civic centre. This, at the very least, seems very muddled. The stepping up document asks us to accept a huge expenditure for a building that there has been no coherent justification for. We know nothing about it, where it will be, and only what it might contain in the most general terms. I can tell you that a company board of directors will dismiss such a flimsy proposal out of hand and certainly not take it to their shareholders. Finally,
some people will say the woman gets the last word, so she is this time.
Might have to be quick with the last word.
The stirring title of the consultation document is Stepping Up for Our Tuna. This really, really concerns me as being a teacher and been involved with young people for many, many years. And not only young people, but younger ones. And I find there is a huge amount of anxiety in the community about what is happening. How is a new civic centre and revamped CBD going to help our Mokopuna as the global climate crisis, not to mention COVID, really begins to bite with more droughts and water shortages and strange weather patterns and more pandemics and other threats we're not prepared for? Our Mokopuna needed to invest in our people, make them strong by making our communities with their different talents and skills more inclusive. Council needs to show wise and imaginative leadership with strategies that will ensure all in our community are ready for the challenges that the future holds. A future that is really with us already. We really must, we believe, live with what we have and use it creatively and wisely.
Thank you, Diane. And can we, are you happy to leave a copy of that with us?
Sure.
Because it just expands on your other. So I'll just allow one question because we're now at the time. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm just asking if you're aware of the United States Los Angeles Olympic Games bid, which was successful, and that was successful based on the fact that everything that they're doing is using facilities that they already have. My question is, were you aware of that?
Yeah, I certainly have read that, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have our public deliberations on the 2nd of June and we will make decisions on the submissions that we've received. So thank you. If you can just pass it around, we'll give it to Harriet and then that can be part, go with your submission for the deliberations then. Thank you. Thank you. So the next submitter is Peter Campbell. So it's on page 138. Welcome. Oh, it's you right.
Oh, I've got to get my glasses.
You're the second one this
I
morning
went
that's
for
done
the
that.
long distance one so I could see you from over there, and I went for the short distance.
And most of us around the table can relate to that. So welcome. So we allow 10 minutes, but 7 minutes for to speak to your submission, which councillors have read, and then 3 minutes for some quick questions. So over to you.
Ke te mihi a hau ki a koutou ngā mema o te kaunihara he rā o whakarohiori tēnā kōrua. Tēnā koe me aku hoa I roto I te tēnei rōpū. I just mihi to people I know, who I have friends in amongst the group, your group. My submission really was to address the quote at the beginning of the draft that said we intend to step up and invest in the future of our Mokopuna, and I think that's a brilliant thing to start your draft with, and thank you for that. And that's what I've addressed my concerns to. So basically I'm under other feedback rather than the civic centre or the revamp and the housing. Although in my submission I did talk about those, supporting the views that you have. So first of all, I want to look at water and climate change and the restoration of the urban Indigenous habitat. So those are the 3 things that I would like to talk about. Oh, and my whānau are there, and include my Mokopuna, so we're going to step up for them. For water, we need to be proactive. I know the 3 waters, they talk about the 3 waters in the government systems and things that have started already, haven't they? But we've got to be proactive. We can't just sit and wait and say, oh, what's going to happen? So the council needs to make the use of water a water sensitive design. And that means we need integrated systems to, you can't treat sewage and drinking water and the other one.
Stormwater.
Sorry?
Stormwater.
Stormwater, yeah, as separate, because they're not, and at the moment, most of our stormwater goes into creeks that cross the town, west to east, and end up in the Ruamahanga River. So, something similar happens to, well, not similar, but that also happens to the sewage, because it goes down to the sewage ponds, and overflow goes into the Ruamahanga. And the drinking water, well, we depend on the drinking water from the mountains, but yeah. It is important that we increase spending to upgrade the present infrastructure, like the leaky pipes and the need to have larger water storage system in case of complete drought. For planning, there needs to be provision for rainwater storage systems for housing and council and commercial buildings. Systems of subdivision work and building needs to have a requirement for the development of systems to support the use of grey water, use and reuse of grey water in private and public places. And I've already mentioned that we need to increase the size of the water storage for the town supply at Kaituna. For the whole system, I would recommend that. I don't know if you already look at. There's a firm called Stormwater 360, which has innovated. Well, they've been going for 25 years, but they have excellent alternative ways of draining water, like on instead of building a concrete or asphalt car parking area, you make ways for the water to seep through and join the sort of like the soil subsystem, rather than it just draining off into the drains. So that's one of the things that they promote and produce the products for. Also, like they have like drains and sort of like cages that catch chunks and lumps in or the stormwater drains. Or they have a number of different products that are excellent. I also suggest that, or hope that you have close monitoring of people's waters and how they use it and how they plan to use it, and that you have advice available for people and for the townspeople and legal teeth to deal with it when effluent or leakage or problems arise that are caused by poor planning or poor usage. Oh, is that it?
No.
7 minutes?
No, that's 6 minutes. It's just
Okay.
giving you a heads
I'm
up.
only 8.5 through. Okay, the Wakamoiko stream, I really oppose that on the grounds of the effect it'll have downstream for the Wakamoiko, well, for the creeks like the Wakamoiko and the Mikimiki, for the rivers like the Waipola and the Ruamahanga and the Waingawa. So their health is going to be compromised. The scheme depends on taking water at high flow times, and that cannot but affect the downstream effects on the Ruamahanga of the Waingawa. Because rivers have developed this, well, the system is that high flow times flush out the, you know, the rest of the riverbed. The cost of the water has yet not been decided, and I imagine that it's going to be a lot more than they planned or that they have predicted. And if you look at the Waimea Community Dam project, that became a huge burden on the council, and that was taken to the ratepayers. So I think it was about a further 63 million.
So Peter, I think we're up to the questions. If you want to, you can take another couple of minutes, but that will restrict the time for people to ask you any questions. So if you want to raise anything else, otherwise, you know.
Okay, thank you. And oh well, the restoration of urban indigenous habitat, I think it would be great for the council to really investigate the ways that we can do that, and that affects the health. Having more indigenous fauna and flora within the city will be very good on the health of well, our Mokopuna, but all the population. Relaxation, mental health, physical health, reducing stress, all those things. So, questions?
Okay. So thank you for your submission. I'll now ask councillors if they have any questions. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you for your submission. On the last page, you have under the climate change challenges, sewage treatment encourage composting toilets. Are you talking urban or rural?
Oh, well, it's possible to have composting toilets in town. You don't have to have be joined up to the sewage system. So that, yeah. So no, yeah. It could be investigated as an urban solution. Yeah.
Councillor Nelson.
Sure. The Stormwater 360 innovative and the scheme you talked about, I saw a presentation of a shed where it looked almost too good to be true. Have you got examples of where that's actually really working?
Oh, what a good question. Sam, any?
Yep, there's an excellent one in Taupo. They've got a range of installed products, including the baskets that go directly underneath. They're like cages that go directly underneath the stormwater grates, and there's like a filter that captures sort of larger materials. But then they also have this thing, now what the heck was it called? Downstream Defender, I think they had some flash name on it, and it's got a centrifugal kind of action, so the water goes into a spin and siphons off the water, siphons off the sort of particles from the water, and their results are astounding.
Okay, we can, sorry, but that's the 10 minutes. We can, will that be on the Storm 360 website?
Yep, and also Taupo District Council have some excellent materials too, and evidence, which is probably more important.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your submission. So we have public deliberations on the 2nd of June, and you're welcome to attend as we discuss your submission.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're now on to page 164, and welcome, Kira Yvette. If you want to step forward and speak to your submission. So there's 7 minutes for you to present, and we allow 3 minutes for councillors to ask questions. The bell will ring at 6 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, Kira.
When does my time start?
When you're ready.
It's time starts.
Tapping
Tēnā koutou. Ko rangi tūmau toku maia, ko Ruamahanga toku wawa, ko Kurahopoa me Taki Tumu oku waka, ko Rangitāne me Ngāti Kahunguru oku iwi, ko Te Oreore toku marae, ko Te Oreore toku papakainga, ko I Bea Praisahai. Sorry, it's okay. E nā kai kaunahere, tēnā e te mihi atu ki a koutou katoa. My name is Yvette Grace and I live at Te Oreore. My ancestors were amongst the first people to walk, live and play in this region, and I have the privilege of continuing to maintain our presence at Te Oreore. My vision and whānau order strategy is to establish a papakainga at Te Oreore on our land for my whānau and ultimately for my grandchildren's grandchildren. For me, it is a necessity that we build our tables so that our children don't have to ask a stranger for what it is. As you're aware, housing is not only scarce, housing has become severely unaffordable and ownership, the Kiwi dream, has become out of reach for many. The major driver of the cost being the cost of land. However, for papakainga, the cost of land is not the barrier to establishing papakainga, with the biggest roadblocks being the financial and regulatory system barriers. But legislation is changing rapidly to ensure equitable outcomes across the board are achieved. These include legislative changes now that encourage and entreat councils to support the development of papakainga. While I support the council's preferred option to invest in housing for seniors, I fully believe that the inclusion of papakainga development and planning will provide whānau order solutions for this community. But the process needs to be made simple and affordable. This model will ensure that whānau look after whānau, inclusive of our own seniors. But there are rules and processes that often act as barriers to papakainga and other development on Māori land. If the majority of land in New Zealand was still held in collective tenure, we would have financial and regulatory systems geared towards supporting collective housing options. And it's interesting to note that this is actually common in Europe and North America. Very common, but in our case, it'll be transformative. It is time to be truly transformative in a way that rules and processes have prevented Māori from building on our own land. That we, as a settler colonial nation, begin to reckon with the realities of our past and present, built on rules and regulations that have prevented us from using our land for ourselves. As we build towards an equitable future, we need to reconsider our tenure system and options for enabling collective tenure, particularly for Māori land and Māori owned land in general title. Hastings District Council is proving to be a major enabler to papakainga development through their district plan and commitment to their long-term plan. The district plan encourages the sustainable use of land and resources by enabling services such as access ways, water supplies and packaged sewage treatment plants to be used by multiple dwellings over time as needed. It also states upfront the obligations of those exercising functions and powers under the Act to provide for the special relationship of Māori and their culture and traditions with their ancestral lands, waters, sites, wahitapu and other taonga. So that's sacred places and treasures. Your introduction starts with a reference to the Resource Management Act 1991. The Masterton, one day, the Hastings District Council recognises that a number of land titles were taken by the Register as a status declaration under Part 1 of the Māori Affairs Amendment Act 1967. This Act allowed for the Crown to change the status of Māori land if it was not deemed to be suitable for effective use or occupation. A number of these sites were declared general land by the Crown between 1967 and 1973, often without the knowledge of the owners of the sites. A number of these titles have remained in the ownership of the descendants ever since, and the owners, Hubble and Whānau, still have aspirations to live on their land. The Hastings District Council have also identified expected outcomes for their community in its entirety, and include things like the improvement and maintenance of Māori quality of life consistent with cultural values, aspiration and customs in relation to traditional lands, waters, sites, wahitapu and other taonga treasures. And that the maintenance and improvement of the character and amenities of districts where Papakainga have been developed. So basically where they've developed Papakainga, the amenities in the areas have improved greatly. There has also been recent changes to legislation with the recent enactment of the local government rating of Whenua Māori Amendment Act 2021. There are opportunities for owners and occupiers of Māori freehold land to fully engage with their land and fulfil whānau aspirations. I asked the Masterton District Council to think about how you empower our whānau Māori in response to these legislative changes. Examples of things the council can do relate to the new powers of Chief Executive being able to write off rates, arrears, unused Māori land, and then subject to ngā whenua rāhui kawinata is now non-rateable. Individual houses on the same block of Māori land can now be rated separately. Ratepayers can now apply for a rate remission for Māori land under development. Multiple blocks of land can now be treated as one for rating purposes. So what I'm saying to the Masterton District Council is let's do our future selves a favour and do the transformational work now by explicitly including the development, the support and development of Papakainga in the Masterton District Council long-term plan. Let's join other councils with equity-focused decision making.
Okay, so we're now open for questions, so I'll go Councillor Peterson, Councillor Ryman and Tera.
Are there other councils apart from Hastings that are going down this track?
I don't really know, Chris. I would imagine so, but I don't know. So that was the only council that we could see that were actually doing something.
It may be worth us approaching local government.
My comment, Grace, was actually to say I believe Te Rāwhiti is taking the same approach for Māori land because of the same issues that you've addressed.
Yeah.
And I absolutely applaud your presentation. Thank you.
So we can make this a whole East Coast thing, could we not, with Te Rāwhiti, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa?
There was a question in there,
There was a question in there, and then I needed to respond to Chris, and I forgot the question.
Peter.
Segue. Thank you for your presentation. I wanted to know that, given the new changes to the legislation, what do you see as the council's responsibility to tell the whenua in this space, and how we can move along the plan that you've provided to us? How could we? What would be the council's responsibility in negotiating a smooth process for public parliament to go? That's right.
Well, I think to take away some of the, I guess to help to support the planning and development of Papakainga. You know, with the regulatory rules, rules about not being able to build on acreage under so much. So, you know, some of our whānau, they only have 5 acres. So we sit under that. And what we need for you to do is undo all of those regulatory laws and processes that actually prevent us. Yeah. And also the other thing I wanted to say is that the development of Papakainga comes at no cost to the council. So So, I think it's important.
Thank you.
How many dwellings do you think you could build out of 6 approximately? Best case scenario.
On my land, well, I've got just under 10 acres. I don't want to fill it with houses because I'm also planting a food forest. So maybe 5. I've got 5 kids, so maybe 5. And I've got a block around the corner that you got 5.
So thank you for the submission, Yvette, and we will be having deliberations on the 2nd of June, and that's where we consider and respond to the submissions that everybody made. So it's open to the public, so it would be good. But thank you for your submission. Interesting to see what happens today in the budget regarding public eye. I think we might see some changes. So.
Yeah, well, but don't forget it comes at no cost to you.
Thank you. Okay. I'll just give you a 2-minute break, and then I'll call Duncan after you want to come forward. Hi, Duncan. And we'll just wait for a couple of minutes, but you can come and sit in the front here. The page number is 257. And any. So Duncan, Chief Exec now came from the provincial.
We didn't do so much planning to place the same thing. Sorry? We didn't do so much planning to place the same thing.
It's worked out, you know.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Great search.
Okay, it's Tom.
And lot sizes as well.
So I might make a start. So Duncan, I'm not too sure if you heard, but it's the submission is 10 minutes, 7 minutes for you to speak to your submission, and we allow 3 minutes for questions. The bell will go at 6 minutes, so it's just to indicate you've got another minute or so to speak. So we have your submission. You can take it that councillors have read sustainable water wrapper submission, but I'll hand over to you to highlight whatever you wish from that submission. Over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. And fellow councillors. My name is Duncan Moore. I'm speaking on behalf of Sustainable Water Wrappers submission. It's a fairly short and to the point submission, but I'll just very quickly recap the main points in it, and then try to focus a bit on the climate change aspect of it. Can you hear me? I have a soft voice. Thanks. I can tend to. Yeah, wiggle a finger at me. I do. So to quickly recap, we basically say that we think council can do more to reduce the impacts of climate change. No surprises in this. about the long-term plan consultation, I suppose our focal point is that in Sustainable Water Output Group, we see the business center upgrade really should only happen after the civic center revamp. That seems a logical kind of getting the cart behind the horse. You don't know what the specific project should look like until the wider context is set. So we think that is an important sequential point. Water, we make the point that it's very good improving the visibility and accessibility and this whole Waipoa area upgrade, the plan for that. The Homebush wastewater treatment plant, make something about that, focusing on that some more. I'll add in, just since the submission was written, there was, I think, 3 of our members presented at, were asked to present at the recent water resilience public meeting. I think Mayor Ridley were at that, and I don't know if any of the others went, but it was a good evening. And so we can't really ignore just the point that Ian Gunn, our secretary, made that evening. Let me back up. Within Sustainable Water Output, we have quite a range of views about water output, water limited, and the storage, the water storage proposal. Everything from strong support to die in the ditch opposition, which, just an aside, Sustainable Water Output, for me, has been this real soul home where, honest to goodness, we sit around tables and with deeply divergent views about important issues like water up of water, and hammer them out sometimes to midnight. Brock can attest to that. And really listen with some good thinking, and drilling down, as you can appreciate from the Official Information Act requests that we put into the District Council recently. Well, water up of water, I think one point that all of us can agree on is that we struggle to see Masterton District Council jumping on board early in the scheme as a strong supporter. Whether or not farther down the track it appears to be the best approach for increased storage, that there is general consensus in Sustainable Water Output that the District Council needs some kind of augmentation to its storage to get that, to reach that 60-day dry spell that industry is talking about, with the raised minimum amount. The leak fixing, that has to happen first, and then got a good start on it. 9,000 homes, I think, have already been meters installed. Well, whether the dam approach, the Wakamoa project is the best approach. Just Kaiho, let it crystallize a bit before the District Council jumps on board and becomes committed to this private program that I think we think is likely to morph in the future. I hope I made that clear enough. But we'll move on. Move on, because the focus of our concern for this LPP consultation really is the climate emergency. We'll make a few points that I'll recapture. One, and then I want to close with maybe a fresh idea. The Parks and Open Spaces strategy, you might not see that as part of your climate emergency response, but we see it as a key element in both mitigating and adaptation from climate change. There's so much opportunity for tree planting, for biodiversity enhancement. here in Masterton. Second, we make the point that we would love to see, to the extent, we really do see MDC as the local leaders that could be stepping forward a lot more. I'll come back to that point. Third, we would like to see substantial increases in the staffing and funding and community engagement. Hiring Natasha has been great, but maybe expand her to full-time focus on climate change at a very small start. Increasing the number of EVs that the council own has been good. Now move on to the charging stations. Increase the number of charging stations. Get it out there. They're sort of leading role. Pursue options to utilize solar and wind power at council enterprises. And get those education programs on reducing, especially water wastage. If any of you have looked at the emissions reduction and management plan, you can see that about 18 months ago, you added in to your own reductions inventory, emissions inventory, the sewage, the wastewater treatment. And suddenly the emissions go from 700 tons a year of carbon equivalents to 3,400 something tons of emissions. And what made that happen was just this bookkeeping point of adding in the wastewater treatment plant. So you can see what you.
David, can I just say the 7 minutes have gone, but
Oh, okay.
no, but happy that you continue on. It just reduces the time that councillors have got to ask you questions. So if you need another minute or two to sum up, that's fine. And then I'll allow just one question from councillors. So you'll call if you want to sum up and finish.
Are people busting with questions? All right, I'll just do one.
Well, you can
summarize.
Okay? Yeah, you can summarize.
Where this comes together is in looking for leadership and for the biggest bang for your buck. Is this evening there's the Masterton District Council will be doing footprinting at the library, carbon footprinting. You may not have known it, but from 6 o'clock, go on in and have your own carbon footprint measured. It's just like what happened with the carbon caravan on Earth Day, using the same software, in fact, it will be. Well, similarly, the core government, core program for reducing agricultural emissions, the #1 goal for that is to have 1/4 of farms doing their carbon footprint for their farm, 1/4 of them by the end of this year to a footprint. Now, 75% of Wairarapa's emissions are agricultural. So 1/4 of the farms in the Wairarapa will be footprinted this year, hopefully. It'd be great to get behind that and have it as a goal that 1/4 of the households of Masterton footprint, because our farmers are doing it. And you see how that kind of just jujitsus what is already happening for very little. We see it as a very constructive kind of exercise that people do. And you see for yourself, oh, what can I do to get on board? I better stop there, and if somebody's got a question, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Duncan. Councillor Ryan?
The part in your presentation which talks about comprehensive education programs, tell me, are there some examples that we can pick up and utilise?
Comprehensive education program.
Education program in this presentation, in this submission.
Any councillors want to help me out? Because I don't have one. Yeah, that comes to mind. But
I'm talking about our wider community.
Yeah.
Not our schools, because the schools do it well.
And actually in the written submission, it was focusing comprehensive education on water wastage. So a water focus. And that's considering how much wastewater costs come in terms of CO2 emissions.
something we have to explore when we set up the community focus.
I think metering is a great educational.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you for your submission, Duncan. So on the 2nd of June, there'll be public deliberations around all the submissions that we've received, and you're welcome to attend that as well. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you all for your ears.
So welcome to Tiawhina Cameron Community Hub. Donna and Queenie and Robert, come on up. It's for councillors, it's page 167 of our agenda. So Donna, I think you heard 7 minutes, 3 minutes for questions.
Longer than that. Thank you for firstly listening to us and taking the opportunity to tell you why you should fund us more and keep us going. We sit independently, as you know, on the east side of the Cameron block, and we reach out to our whānau, our people, and the wider part, but mostly on the east side, and we're able to give those people that fall through the cracks, being able to connect to other agencies, other organisations, and we're finding that they're ending up on our doorstep because we're able to walk with them and get results. And, you know, like I said, it's more than 7 minutes worth of proof that we've done this, and, you know, like, we get results. We get results because they trust us. It's an environment that is safe, non-judgmental. I was trying to think of things, you know, that I could talk to you about, and so it's not what I think, it's what the people in our community, the people that attend Tiawhina. So I did a quick little survey last week, and I asked, you know, why do they come to Tiawhina? And 66% said it was the company. Culture, 8%. Home away from home. Why do you like it? 58% said it's friendly. And one even, which blew me away, made the comment, if it wasn't for us and the lengths that we go to help people, they would have been on suicide watch, and quite often hear that. It's welcoming, it's positive, it's local, because we're right there in the heart of the block. What have you learned from coming to Tiawhina? 100% new skills. You know, over the last 3 years, I've had 13 of our volunteers go into work, employment, full employment. One of our volunteers has gone into study and got a level 4 degree in childcare. You know, it's giving them the encouragement to be able to go forward and achieve whatever they want. You know, everybody has something to give. And the beauty of that is, you know, like, they come in and they think they have nothing to offer, you know, to the community. And yet when they sit down and, you know, meet with others, their courage and ability to understand that they have abilities to give to others. And so we, out of that, get tutors that then go on to teach and get paid to do that. And that's through the support of REAP and other organisations I have a close contact with. So I like to keep my finger in the pie of everywhere that I can turn to for help for the whānau that are, you know, are coming to our door. And I'm going to pass this.
She left out one question that says what makes Tiawhina stand out from other agencies. 25% said non-judgment, 25% said supportive, 25% said whānau, 25% said they feel they belong, and 8% said that they feel listened to. Now, we all know that it's not a house, a literal building that does this work in our community. It's a person, and it's our coordinator, which is Donna, which is why she's not going to blow her own trumpet. I'm going to blow it for her. So, you know, we all know that the east side of Masterton is deprivation 10 on the index. We know that with that deprivation comes lots of social problems. And I can wholeheartedly, as part of the Eastside Community Group, who works closely with Te Awhina, say that if it weren't for the efforts that the coordinator of Te Awhina goes to and really reaches out, and all those non-judgmental and all the rest of it comes in, then there would be some huge gaps, and there would be a lot more problems in our area. So, you know, groups like this, finding funding, like many other groups in our community, is difficult. But if you were to fund this for the next 3 years, that would mean for the next 3 years we've got some sort of security in the position, some security in our community, knowing that there's that consistent person there that our community knows that they can go to and get that support that they need. There's a lot more going on outside the house than there actually is going on inside. And you know, I every now and then she doesn't get supported with, what do you call it, when someone, supervision, that's right. So every now and then I take Donna out for lunch just so she can go, because she needs to sometimes. And what I hear in the big riff of is a whole heap of stuff that actually lots of other people should in this community who are getting funded to do this stuff should be doing. And often that stuff is getting backfilled over here as well. So yeah, you just need to support our community by supporting the housing position so that we've got that security and not having to spend time looking for money.
Kia ora, thank you, thanks for your submission. I'm going to ask Councillor Ryan, who's got her hand up, then Councillor Nelson.
I'll declare that I know Donna very well because I employed her originally, but there's a very important part of your work you haven't talked about, Donna, and I want you to talk about it, and that's the work you do connecting people who should be receiving income related rents as tenants of Trust House with MSD.
So,
that's my first question.
Members of the community that live in trust houses, I have a connection with Palmerston, a lady in Palmerston who is head of MSD housing, and so it takes the stress out of our whānau, having to sit on the phone for 40 minutes, waiting to almost beg to get their income reduced, their rent reduced to their income. And so I do that, they come to me, I get their details, and all I have to do, it's just so tidy, is email this person, and then these people with me get a phone call, and then they get on the income. And I do 4 to 5 a week, and it's brilliant. And we've had a success rate, and I don't know whether it's just pure luck on my side and being able to marry people up with houses. And it is having a good relationship with my housing officers at Trust House, Matt Smith. He's just, he thinks the same as me. He's passionate about our whānau and our housing crisis. I had a lady come in with 4 children 2 days ago, and we've been able to connect her yet again with a house. And it's juggling, you know. We have a list. It doesn't necessarily mean because you're at the top of the list that you get a home. It is a need-to-need basis.
Thank you, Donna. I just want to acknowledge how important that work is.
And how much you have done in that area, we need to move over here. Could you just clarify about the lotteries, because they don't fund community centres, do they continue to fund you?
Yes, they do. Partially.
Okay, I think Tim had a question.
Sure, it's been 21 years since I last.
Oh, Brent, sorry.
Just in regards to this, so if someone just turns up, just self-refers, walks in the door, and you make them feel comfortable, and you find out what their needs needs are, and you just help them. So there's no a school having to contact or anything like that, they just drop out.
We do have other agencies refer their clients to me. And let's be clear, I'm not a social worker. I just hate
It's another
injustice.
stream of work that you're
Yeah,
looking for.
huge stream of work. It's just unjust for our people. Yeah.
Okay, councillor Kia.
Kia ora Donna. I've had the pleasure of visiting the house and having numerous conversations with you in the work that you do. In terms of assurity of funding, maybe just explain to the entire group some of the skills that you are teaching people in the community. We know some of the outcomes and they're fantastic, but there's a little more to it, isn't there?
So, you know, like from the outside looking in, we look like a glorified knitting group, crochet group, whatever. What it does, it's so much deeper than that. You get a whole group of people, in fact we had 11 in our little lounge on Tuesday, that are all connecting, and out of that you're building a big picture of confidence, comradeship. Lost it.
It's the social skills.
It's the
everything
social
from-
skills,
Yeah.
and from that builds confidence. You know, like I've been there 8 years nearly, and I just have seen tremendous stuff. I'd love to write a book. It's
There you
been
go.
good outcomes.
That's your next project.
When I have time.
Thank you very
So
much
thank
for
you
coming
for-
along, presenting
for
the
listening.
deliberations, seconded Joan. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, the next one is page 206, and we welcome the Lifelight representatives from the Lifelight Trust. As you would have heard, 7 minutes for your presentation and 3 minutes for questions. The bell will go at 6 minutes. And Lyndall is here. Yes, hi.
Kia ora everybody.
Kia ora.
I'm Sebastian from the Lifelight Trust Rescue Base. I head up the fundraising efforts, and this is Lyndall, my colleague, who does a fantastic job looking after our grant activity. We really appreciate the opportunity to say thank you for the previous support and have the opportunity to hopefully be considered as part of your long-term thinking and hopefully get to continue this great relationship we've had with yourself. So I'll jump right in and I'll just...
You can take that, we have read your submission.
Fantastic, thank you. So just really briefly recap on Anzac Weekend, which was a busy weekend for our organisation. It always is. We're always over here, and this was sort of one example of what that weekend looks like. Very briefly, it started on Friday evening, 7:31, our air ambulance plane gets dispatched to Masterton to get someone urgently to hospital. At midnight, our Westpac chopper's back over again to Cape Palliser for an accident. That afternoon, our plane takes someone to Auckland Hospital. 5:50 p.m, Westpac chopper's back at it, South Polaraka to a serious incident. 9:16 p.m, Westpac chopper's back over here to Masterton for a critical motor accident, and it goes on. You know, what we're talking about today is that, you know, every time that emergency phone rings and we've got to get over here and get someone either in our Westpac chopper from an accident scene to hospital, or in our air ambulance plane to that specialist that just isn't available here. And that's whether the road is busy, closed, snowed out, or simply time is of the essence that we can keep doing. And that's what we're seeking today, is that assurance. And I commend you for looking at a 3-year opportunity. We would love that, to give us some confidence to be able to keep doing what we do. COVID last year was massive for us. It was a time for, and I'm sure you hear this from everybody that you're hearing from, it was a time when the community needed more from us. It came at a higher cost. And it was at a time when fundraising was so difficult, when all of our fundraising events got cancelled, our street collection, our open day, you name it. You know, at that time it became apparent just how important these ongoing agreements are, because a lot of our funding comes in, you know, when we have a successful appeal, or when a generous person passes away and they leave a gift in their will. But those things are really hard to budget for, so it's quite rare for us to have opportunities like we do with yourselves, where we know when it's going to come and we know how much it's going to be, and that's so helpful for us planning our maintenance and our staff time and the rest of it.
So Lifelight are delighted to be able to deliver this vital service to the Wairarapa region. The figures have been updated from the submission that we put in a few weeks ago. So just having a look here, total Wairarapa residents flown by Lifelight were 189. This is for the year to March this year. Of those, 83 were flown by the Westpac rescue helicopter and 106 by the air ambulance planes. And of that 189, 112 were Masterton residents, 46 flown by the Westpac rescue helicopter and 66 by the air ambulance plane. The overall numbers for the Wairarapa region were up 8% from last year, and the Masterton figures were up 10%. So given that, your terrain can be super rugged with rocky coastlines through to dense bush, getting people from here via air to Wellington Hospital can change a patient's outcome quite dramatically. If we look at the next slide there, you've probably seen this one before, but it just highlights how from our life flight base over to Masterton in the Westpac rescue helicopter, the flight time is 23.5 minutes. As opposed to over 2 hours if we were transporting that patient via road, and that's not without delays such as roadworks, accidents, peak hour traffic and what have you.
Thank you. All right, so what do you get for your money? We won't go into too much detail here, but just briefly, we've talked a little bit about the flight time. The fuel cost to get here is $162. That gets us one way to Masterton. Beyond that, we're funding things like maintenance. It's super important that all our aircraft are maintained to the highest standards so they can take off immediately. Our warrant of fitness can come in a little bit higher than your daily driver, and on a bad day, our warrant of fitness is up to $250,000 in the chopper, so that does add up. Obviously, we need to maintain constantly. The other area that this funding goes towards is safety. So those are things like straightforward things like helmets and the fire retardant suits that our crewmen and crew ladies like Julian right there wear. They all come at a cost, and we're not funded for any of that equipment. So that's another aspect that your money will go towards. Now, the total forecast that we're anticipating, the shortfall in funding to save all the people that we forecast we're going to need to save in the wider Wairarapa region is over 700,000 for this coming year. So it does add up. We have an amazing group of supporters that make that happen. We'll certainly love you to continue to be one of those, please.
I'm just going to finish off with a patient story. This young lady is called Samantha. She's a good friend of my youngest daughter's actually. Her and her family were holidaying over at Riversdale Beach, where she suffered an anaphylactic response to a bee sting. She had had a sting in her arm a few months before, which swelled up, and medical teams at the time told her parents that the next one may not be quite so good. And it wasn't. Amanda, her mum, who's a nurse, knew that they were in trouble when she started clawing at her throat and saying that she couldn't breathe. So they got to the local store where they called 111. The road ambulance was summoned, as well as the Westpac rescue helicopter, and she was airlifted from Riversdale to Masterton Hospital, where she was given further treatment and kept in overnight in case there were any further complications. She now carries an EpiPen with her wherever she goes. I have seen her little friends wrap around her if there is a bee in close proximity, so it would be a really brave bee that got to her in those circumstances. But her family know that the outcome could have been really, really different, and are very grateful to the local community, the ambulance crews, and Lifelight itself.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity. We really, really appreciate it. Fundraising, as you know, has gotten tougher. The check's being phased out, with a number of our volunteers just phasing out due to COVID. It's a bit of a different world now, and so that assured funding is something that would be so helpful for us, and we would really appreciate that. So thank you. We're open to questions.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Fraser?
Yeah, at what level are you funded by central government?
We have a number of contracts with Ministry of Health and with ACC and DHBs. Those add up to about 50% of what it costs to save a life, and the other 50% comes from the community.
So it's basically 50-50.
It is. Once you add it up, it's about 50-50. Yeah.
Okay, is there any other questions? Councillor Councillor Nelson, sorry.
What's the why are helicopters sometimes and why are aeroplanes sometimes?
Good question.
Needs-based.
Yeah, good question. Needs-based. So a chopper can land on an intersection or in a field next to a road accident, like this field right here where we picked up some Masterton.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
A plane is pressurised. For the diver that we flew a couple of weeks ago who had the bends, a plane goes much faster than we need to get a sick baby up to Starship Hospital. We flew a family member of mine a few months ago. You know, that's where a plane is fabulous. or a plane can fly someone who's got, like let's say a premature baby and has to take to Masterton Wellington Hospital, and there's a full team around them, keeping them stable, keeping them alive. That's where a plane's amazing, and we can take whānau and mum and dad and other support people. So they do different things.
Okay, is there any other questions, David?
I just wanted to say thank you. I was involved with your chocolate twice in a week.
Wow.
20 minutes you were here the first time, which is fantastic. And the second time you ended up taking the patient straight to Berwick and Christchurch via Kaikoura. So thank you.
Is there a question? Was there a
No,
question?
no, it's a thank you.
Say you aware.
It's a thank you.
It's still not a question. Thank you very, very much for your submission. So we have our deliberations on the 2nd of June, and we will consider all the submissions that we've received. So thank you very much. Thanks, Sebastian. Yes, thanks, Linda. That's great. Thank you. Okay, just moving on. Welcome, Chris, page 159 of our agenda. Welcome, Chris. 7 minutes to talk to your submission. We have read it, and allowing 3 minutes for questions. The bell will go at 6 minutes.
Thanks, Lynn. A lyric from Bob Dylan, if I could please start with that. You don't have to be a weatherman to know which way the wind is blowing. A number of local business people, including Masterton's largest private sector commercial property owners, have asked me to emphasise that this submission is also on their behalf. The theme of your long-term plan publication was standing up for our grandchildren. I'd like you to consider the reality of that for many Masterton families. Their grandchildren aren't growing up here. They're in Wellington, Auckland, Sydney, Singapore, London, or elsewhere. Within the next year, this province will experience the loss of more skilled workers, especially tradespeople, to Australia. And many more grandchildren will call their parents mate on Skype. Today's budget is unlikely to deliver any growth for the Wairarapa. Growth comes from private sector investment, not welfare. If you are serious about improving the futures of today's grandchildren in Masterton, then I respectfully submit that you need to change course from some present intentions. 5 years ago, I decided to shift the focus of my business from Wellington to the Wairarapa, principally in anticipation of the huge opportunity the proposed National Aviation Centre would create in this region. What a shambles that's been, and what opportunities have been squandered. The contribution that project could make to the future of our grandchildren in Masterton, and I have one here too, is immense. Not just tourism, but advanced technology, education and scientific research, to name just a few spin-offs. Economic growth in Masterton is minuscule. In the past year, I've expanded my business into Hawke's Bay and Taranaki. What a contrast. Here, unfortunately, the Masterton Trust Lands Trust has virtually paralysed this town's economy. We have businesses that are keen to be here, but will not consider leasehold land. The fact the large site on the corner of Queen and Russell Streets continues to sit vacant provides all the proof of that. But whether it's leasehold or freehold land, Masterton simply has too little of it at present to generate investment, jobs and prosperity for those grandchildren. It's the future prosperity of Masterton, or rather the lack of it, that's brought me here today. Most of the grandchildren in this town today will leave here for employment and lifestyle. Young people want to live in cities. This town's population will continue to age, and that means less income. In a discussion with some councillors recently, I briefly mentioned rising insurance costs. Now I read that this council has just seen the first signs of what's ahead. Within a decade, do not be surprised if the average home insurance premium in this town exceeds $6,000. Some underwriters will say that that's conservative. And then there's rates. and the ongoing belief of local authorities that just a few % more is somehow always achievable, regardless of what else may be impacting communities. Council's convinced Masterton needs a new civic centre, a project that might create 2 or 3 permanent jobs, but on land that, following the inevitable demise of the Lands Trust, could be home to new businesses employing scores of people. I'm totally opposed to this civic centre concept and to the relocation of the library, and not just for the reason that it further undermines the chances of future prosperity for grandchildren. However you want to describe it, the existing complex, known to all who live in this region as the Masterton Town Hall and the former administration building, offer a terrific opportunity for exactly the sort of complex most appropriate for this town, at considerably less cost than the alternative. I'm not a quantity surveyor or a weatherman, but personally I suspect councillors have been misled on options and costs to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. So open to questions. Are you happy to leave that submission behind, or because it just adds to?
Yes, I can do.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Is there any questions of Chris from councillors? Councillor Nixon.
What led you to think that we've been misled?
Because every time I hear what the cost options are for the existing building, they're different to what other people are telling me who are closer to the action. And I just feel that somehow they're being skewed all the time to higher figures. I think some of the costs of the demolition were grossly excessive in terms of what needs to be done in terms of preparation, were grossly excessive in terms of what contractors had actually suggested the cost would be. I just get the impression that council officers are presenting a different picture to the reality.
So you're saying it's like more like a gold standard
Exactly.
type approach rather
Yep.
than a more pragmatic approach.
Exactly.
Secondly, you talked about the economic growth of the Wairarapa. My understanding is that actually we're pretty much up there in terms of economic growth across New Zealand. So what if you're saying that you've got your business now in Hawke's Bay and Taranaki, what is it that you're seeing here that you're not seeing here?
Companies expand, people being employed, people looking for sites to build new buildings and building new buildings, and people moving into the area for worthwhile employment. In other words, significant incomes. Here we're just not seeing people moving in for new jobs. We're seeing plenty of people move in residentially, but they're people in semi-retirement or planning to be here in retirement. They're not people that are bringing investment into the area or creating new jobs. They're coming in here for basically a quieter lifestyle and enjoying. I mean, the advantage that the Wairarapa has over Wellington is the Wairarapa has 4 seasons and it has a climate that is livable. Wellington doesn't have a climate that's very livable, it's appalling. But people come here, but they're not bringing investment. In Hawke's Bay, we are seeing people coming in with significant investment, creating high-end jobs that are of real benefit.
Okay, so thank you very much. If you want to pass it to Gary, there was. Oh, sorry, Craig, I didn't say anything.
Chris, could you expand on your thoughts on the CBD upgrade?
What do you say again, sorry?
Just expand on your thoughts regarding the.
I left that out because that could be a book. Seriously, Fraser, the places in the world that are now really starting to become the lifestyle centres are the places that have embraced pedestrianisation. And nowhere is that great, is the example greater than Manchester. A place that most English people probably wanted to run away from is now the 4th most populous city in the UK for living, and that follows the pedestrianisation of the Manchester town centre. The other one, Glasgow. Glasgow had the highest crime rate in the UK. They pedestrianised the town centre. Now Glasgow is the 2nd most populous city in the UK for people to live in. The pedestrianisation of city centres, I mean, even Wellington is now talking about pedestrianising the centre city. How on earth they'll do it with really two roads that run through the centre of the city, I don't know. Masterton has a fantastic opportunity for pedestrianisation. The trouble is that people who oppose it have not experienced it overseas. And the people who say, I'm handicapped, I need to be able to get easily to the shops and what have you, don't realise that pedestrianisation makes life easier for them, not harder. And taking cars off the street just makes the place so family friendly. It makes it far more friendly to elderly people. When a woman at the moment gets out of a car in Queen Street and she has to get to the footpath, or a chap, and they're slightly handicapped, they're terrified. The moment someone goes past, there's a loud exhaust, the car goes to, people are intimidated by this sort of thing. And pedestrianisation makes the city friendly.
Okay, look, Brenda, a very quick question.
Yeah.
A very quick response.
Thanks for the submission. I've listened with interest in terms of potentially the difficulty dealing with the trust. What else do you think council could do to help encourage the economic growth through business that eventually?
Well, I really don't think that council needs to do too much. My experience of dealing with council officers here has always been quite positive. But people have no idea. I mean, I had a meeting this morning with the property chap from Australia for Super Cheap Auto. They have 324 stores. They have never experienced what they've been through in Masterton. People don't realise Miko Wakefield, Fletcher's building, have moved out of a trust property down to a privately owned property in Villa Street. In the last 3 months, the trust have said goodbye to a major national company and a major international company. I mean, the reputation that Masterton gets from that, in just terms of it's hard to do business in Masterton, we're going to struggle to attract any significant business to Masterton at all.
I'll call it there because we're not the Lands Trust,
I know.
and would suggest that if you've got those questions, you might want to direct them to Lands Trust. But
Thanks.
thank you for your submission.
Thanks, Ruth.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on now to Enviro Skills, and welcome Karen and Jill, and apologies, we're just getting a bit behind time. So I think you've heard the 7 minutes, 3 minutes, and the bell will go at 6 minutes, so welcome.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko rangi tūmau te mauna, kei te mihi, ko tararua ngā whainmaunga kei te mihi, ko rumahanga te awa kei te mihi, ko rangitāne o Wairarapa, mana whenua kei te mihi, ko Kaminunu ki Wairarapa, mana whenua. And acknowledgements to the councillors and council staff as well for the time and energy that you do put into your role and leading our community. Thank you for supporting Enviro Schools over the years. Oh, Jill just suggested I introduce myself. I'm Karen, I'm the Regional Coordinator for Enviro Schools in the Wellington region, and this is Jill Stewart, who is the facilitator for Enviro Schools in the Wairarapa. So we are here wanting to renew our MOU with the Masterton District Council for the upcoming 3 years, and there are some good reasons to do this. So one is that Enviro Schools is a great fit with Masterton District Council's aspirational outcomes, and in particular the engaged and empowered community, and also the sustainable and healthy environment. And to achieve our community outcomes long term, we really need to take a long view, and Enviro Schools does take the long view. So in the long term, what we believe we need to achieve these outcomes is we absolutely need a generation of citizens who are empowered, informed, and instinctively think and act in regenerative ways.
I was just reading today, so this is research on climate change education, And one point that it made really well in a review of the resource that's out there is that, the need for understanding of how democracy works and about it being a collective thing around climate change action. But to be able to do this, and this is a quote from a guide that's in schools, but it's what our processes are all about, is that to become active, engaged and informed citizens, students need both civics knowledge and experiences of real life decision making on issues that matter to them and to their communities.
And I think also taking the long view, we've got a really obvious place to look for the long view, and that is to mana whenua and kaupapa Māori. And so we support any move to amplify mana whenua voice in this, in Aotearoa, but in this district. So about the EnviroSchools Facilitators role, which is what you guys fund. So that role that the lovely Jill plays involves some direct support for schools and centres. So to help them reflect on their journeys, notice what they're doing well and identify some next steps. It also involves providing opportunities for schools and centres to connect with one another and learn from one another. And then there's a whole lot of behind the scenes kind of work that's not coming up on the PowerPoint, but it is in the PowerPoint. And I can just talk about that. So Jill does a lot of work maintaining here it comes. I might come quickly the rest of it. Maintaining an up-to-date picture of the network so that we can understand the needs of what schools and centres need from us, and also communications with the network and collaborating with other organisations, things that make life easier for schools and centres who have got a lot put on them these days. Hooking them up with appropriate people, and sometimes trying to stop things happening that are just going to make life really difficult. So Jill's is going to share with you a few of the things that have been happening in the EnviroSchools network over the last year or so.
So over the last year, we've had Fernridge School reflect at Green Gold. We have a holistic reflection process, and Opaki and Whareama schools at Silver. And this is a real opportunity for that decision making and to engage with real life opportunities around democracy. It also brings the community together. There are representatives from the school and community, and it gives an opportunity for schools to really slow down, because we know they're busy, and look deeply and to celebrate into the difference they're making, and then to find those next steps of where they want to go with their sustainability journey. Okay, so this year I've started up the Early Childhood Waireka Sustainability Hub again, and they're wanting to focus on zero waste, and so we had quite a deep first session about looking at waste and what's biodegradable and not, and then having Joe Dean around to talk about the realities of recycling and how it's not all straightforward, but then going back to their centres and the real focus on refusing or reducing right from the beginning. Then we had another one, and they've been both down in Masterton, but at least 7 centres are joining in regularly, and we'll have our next one up here. So some of the collaborative things we've been doing is, yesterday we had an amazing event, student hub event with 10 schools, 7 were from the Masterton district, and we collaborated with the Earth School, and they have the expertise on sustainable processes, and it was a great day of workshops. But the schools also were sharing what they were already doing, and then they went away with a bit of an action plan. So again, kids acting out that responsibility, that citizenship, and then going away to make things happen in their schools. We support the Moko Moko project, which is working with a couple of schools we don't work directly with, that around waterways, which again will feed into the whole Masterton and schools working with waterways in Masterton. That's a really great collaboration there. We've got new environmental educators with Mountains to See, and a new manager, education manager at Pukaha, which I'm really excited about. So, and
really looking forward to it, the climate change focus that NDC is leading for conservation work. Again, looking at working with the Wairarapa Earth School at raising student voice. Coming to see you in the weeks before. So again, giving opportunities for students to be part of that democratic processes.
Okay, so I've just got one last
Yes,
slide.
go for it.
So I guess we feel like the Enviro Schools network is going really well in the Masterton district and in the Wairarapa as a whole. And there are still some areas where it would be great to step up for our mokopuna. And one of the things is that while our work supports the processes in schools and ideally that would enable them to easily put them in place, there's so much pressure on them that they could do with a whole lot more on the ground support. And we're also seeing the need as students move through Enviro schools and come out of the primary schools and things become much harder for them again. So we really want to keep working in depth with MIS and support secondary student leadership. And we want to see a real step change. And one of the ways that we'd like an opportunity to scope that. So one of the things that we think could be really neat is some intern roles, where we've got young people who perhaps have been through Enviro schools, have come into secondary school, or have just left school, that could actually help out in the primary schools with some on-the-ground support for things like in their vegetable gardens, waste audits and planting projects, for supporting the teachers and students to be able to get those things really happening. And so that's something that we would really like to be involved in helping happen. Okay. You're going to stop me, aren't you?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, I am. And just said, I mean, I'll open up if there's any questions. So there's no questions, so just do your final but because we've still got a minute. So.
Okay. And so I guess that's just, in order to do that, that's why we've requested an increase across the 3 Wairarapa councils, and Cardigan District Councils seem to be responding very positively, and we've got a conversation similar to this with South Wairarapa District Council next week. Yeah, so tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora. So thank you for that. We will have the public deliberations on the 2nd of June, and we will consider all the submissions then. So thank you very much to both of you for the presentation, and we will share that presentation now that we've got it to our councillors as well. Okay, thank you. So the next one is page 137, and that's Mike Butterick, and Mike's on Zoom. Hi, Mike.
Good morning, everybody.
Okay, so Mike, 7 minutes to speak to your submission. We have read it, and you want to just highlight whatever you wish to highlight, and we'll allow 3 minutes for some questions. So over to you.
Thank you very much, and look, thank you guys for the opportunity to participate via Zoom. I just hope the technology doesn't let us down. I just wanted to start off, I realise the job you guys actually do is quite often unappreciated. So I'd like to commend all of the councillors on the efforts actually made to engage with the community everywhere I've been. You guys have been, whether it's Castle Point, Riversdale. So I don't think anybody can say that you guys haven't had made the most of efforts to actually engage with the community. And no one can say they haven't had the opportunity to do so. So well done on that. Look, in terms of just the Civic Centre, I mean, in principle, yes, I do support it. We need something subject to cost. But I just had a query there. I couldn't find much detail in terms of whether it was a net or a gross cost in terms of disposal of surplus sites and things like that. And I also find it extremely hard to approve something when we actually don't know where the site is, because then you get a bit of an idea on whether the parking is suitable and things like that. So, but in theory, yes, I do support it. We just need something, and I think we just should crack on and actually do it. sorry, I'm just going through my phone here. And the housing for seniors, I obviously fully support the alternative option because in my view, I don't think it's council's role to do that. I think it should the land should be made available to a community housing provider like Trust House and just let them crack on with it. And just on the dog pound, I mean, I hold a very firm view. I cannot see any point in every council having a dog pound. And I would reiterate again, I think there should just be one dog pound in the Wairarapa. And Three Waters, that's just a given there. Sorry, I'm just going down through my submission. Yeah, and I just want to touch on the 11.94 million proposed on the Homebush farm for irrigation. I couldn't support, I worked out what that's costing potentially per hectare. And look, to put on pivot irrigation, you work on about 5,000 a hectare, and those costs are excessively high, I would have thought, for the hectares. And I'd just like to see a lot more work done on expanding that, providing water. I think, in my view, water's it's an asset, not a liability, first and foremost. And I think that's the way it should be regarded. And I think there's a great opportunity to actually push that water onto other areas. And I mean, like, it could go down Manaia Road, it could go across the river. It just seemed excessive, that amount of money for the area, and there wasn't a lot of detail on how that cost was arrived at. And hopefully that's not my phone going flat.
Okay, no, that's good, thank you, Mike. Did you want to, is that it? You didn't want to add anything? Sorry, we lost you on the screen, so.
Yeah, sorry, my phone's going flat.
Okay, I'll quickly see if there's any questions on your submission then. Is there any questions of Mike? No, there's not, Mike. Mike, we've got the deliberations on the 2nd of June where we will consider all of submissions that we've received today. So thank you very much for your submission.
No, well, thank you very much for the opportunity to submit.
And enjoy wherever you are. I think you're outside the region, I hear.
I'm in the Catlins at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
That's location.
That's right. Okay, the next submission is on page 326, and that's Cheryl. Hi, Cheryl. Kia ora, welcome. Come on up. So I think you've heard the process, 7 minutes, and you wanted to talk about fees and charges.
Yes.
So over to you, 7 minutes, 3 minutes for questions.
I'm going to say something in Māori and I'll translate it back for you.
Yep, that's.
So what I'm going to say is ia hatia o te ao, he tangata, which means what's the most important thing in the world? It's people, it's people, it's people. I actually, funny enough, worked from this building for a long time. I worked as a mental health support worker. It's quite funny to come back and
Sure, you might speak up, please. I'm having a
sorry, I actually worked out from this building as a mental health support worker. And I really believe, and I'm not knocking you as a council, you've done a lot of good stuff, you really have. But what my concern is, if you put up the rates to fund your long-term plan, what's the impact going to be on the ratepayers that can't afford to pay their rates? People that have been in their homes a long time do face homelessness. Plus, as coming from a Māori perspective, it's traditional too that old people could hopefully stay in their homes and that people can go back to look after these people in their homes. If they lose their homes, there's their kainga, there's a tūranga waiwai, they've lost it. Also, I had a lot to do with a lot of the people that are homeless now, and I'll cite an example. The other day, I was coming down the main street, and one of our long-term homeless stopped me. He went, Bub, we always call me Bub. He said, I've bought myself, and I won't name his partner, a van. I said, have you? He said, I don't think I could stand another winter sleeping under a bridge, so I bought a van
so he can sleep in a van. And I spoke to him and I said, are you contemplating and going into, the project that's going down Elizabeth Street? And he said, yes. And I said, why don't you? Because then you have an option. You have a base. But if you want to go away with your partner in your lovely van, you can do that. And he said, I never thought of it like that. It's given him options. And I really think as us as a community, whether it's council or trust house, we have an obligation to help our most vulnerable people that can't afford rentals, that there are no rentals. And I'm actually speaking from my heart today. I really am. And I think our long-term homeless and our single beneficiaries, and it's even moving up, where there's going to be a lot more homelessness if we don't get together and do something. It really, really, really concerns me. And that's what I wanted to speak to. I actually took my granddaughter swimming yesterday, and I was so impressed with what the pool resources are looking like. It's amazing. So why can't we all cut our pattern to suit our cloth? Make use of what the facilities that we've got around rather than going for a new civic centre. I'm not here to criticise, I'm just saying, why can't we? That's all I've got to say.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. Thank you for your submission. And I'll open it up for any questions of councillors. Is there any questions from councillors? There appears to be none. So thank you very much for your submission, Cheryl.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Okay,
like I said, I know I write letters in the paper, but you do a lot of good stuff. I mean, the park is beautiful. And like I said yesterday, when I went into the swimming pool complex, I know you do a lot of good stuff, but I will keep writing because I think I write better than what I actually say.
Thanks for coming along. And deliberations are the 2nd of June and they'll be held in public.
Kia ora, Rawa.
Kia ora. Thank you. Okay, so the next one we have, and I think then we don't have one, but we do have Matt from CCS. Matt, did you have anybody else? So they're a bit, we're a bit early, but because the Wellington free ambulance aren't here, if you're not expecting anybody else?
No.
Are you quite happy to do?
Yeah.
Make your present. So come on up. It's page 313 of our agenda, and that's the CCS disability submission. And welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be able to come along and address you all today. I'm just a bit nervous because this is my first submission.
Okay.
So,
there's no need to be nervous. We're not that bad. So the process is 7 minutes. You get to speak to the submission. You can take it that we have read your submission. So anything you may want to highlight from that, and then we allow 3 minutes for questions, for councillors to ask questions. So over to you.
That's great. So, I'm Matt Wills. I'm an independent access contractor for CCS Disability Action throughout the central region. And like I said, thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you today. Access has always been one of the biggest things in my heart, and particularly for people with disabilities, which is why I took up the position really, because 25% of the population now identify as having an impairment. Disabled people under 65 are 2.5 times more likely to experience material hardship than their peers, and 1.6 times more likely to say their housing is unaffordable. For these people who are usually on fixed low incomes and an increase to council services will add pressure. Many already struggle to meet the basics of rent, electricity, and may not be able to adequately feed their families or pay for transport options on what remains. In addition, the ageing population adds significantly to the number of people with mobility, vision and hearing needs. We would like to have the voice of disabled people represented across all of council's major projects and employment areas. Under the new urban unitary plan regulations, there is no provision for parking requirements, and there will be increased demand on public parking. To support practical decision making, data is needed to show council where disabled people live, need to go and how they get there. It appears that current decision making is not supported by robust disability and access data. The demand for accessible housing is increasing and there is little or no stock available. If housing is designed with universal design principles, it benefits all people. Council is able to influence housing design by considering incentives in the consent processes. Removing barriers and improving access ensures everyone can contribute and participate. Accessibility is an ongoing goal. There is always the need for improvements, especially as new and innovative approaches are always being developed. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks very much for your submission and the points that are raised in it. I'll just see if councillors have any questions for you, Matt. Councillor Dawson.
Okay.
Hi.
So are you saying at the moment there's no actual requirement for accessibility or in the building codes?
The CCS has a parent company which is Universal Design, so they consider, I guess, kind of housing. So to make it accessible from the start, so they build accessible housing from the start. So it's really just if there's access requirements out in the community, which is one of the biggest passions, to allow people with disabilities to move around more adequately in their communities of choice, and I guess the use of public facilities as well. Like, I mean, in terms of the new civic centre that's being considered, I just think access needs to be considered across all those projects.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you for coming, Matt. In the recommendations you've made, you talk about Masterton being an inclusive community or society, and you refer to the information being in a format that is exclusive to some people, and you refer to some of the solutions being the easy read format.
Yeah.
Now, what percentage of the population, or what sort of number do you think is excluded because the information is in the traditional small print written format?
I was really kind of thinking, I guess, in terms of that around digital exclusion. So a lot of people with disabilities don't actually have access to internet or any kind of technology, not easily anyway. Like, I mean, particularly kind of not at home. So I guess just kind of opening up those kind of opportunities for so that people with disabilities are able to access that kind of opportunity, and whether they be an easy read format or some be converted into braille, it just would allow more people with disabilities to have a greater input and a greater voice into council business. So yeah, just.
Thank you, Matt. Is there any other questions?
Maybe digital incompetence is a disability in itself.
Yeah, Yes.
Talking about himself, Matt.
Yeah.
Okay, Matt, thank you very much and thank you for coming along and
You're
making
welcome.
the submission. And we have our public deliberations on the 2nd of June where we will consider all of the submissions that we have received and make decisions on them. So thank you
That's
for coming
great.
along today.
Thank you
Thanks,
for your time.
Matt. Thank
You
you.
did well, you did.
You did very well.
They're not too daunting, are they?
No.
Yeah.
I also do radio, and that's probably less daunting than this.
Okay, so moving on now, and I've got my pages all around the wrong way. Have we got, Ruth, are you here for Wellington Free?
Yes, I am.
Okay, are you expecting anybody else or you're doing the presentation?
I'm it.
You're it, okay then, well, we will, please come on up. That's on page 147 of our agenda. Do you want to?
Yes.
So Ruth, you have 7 minutes to speak to your submission, to the submission from Wellington Free. We have, councillors have read the submission and then we allow 3 minutes for questions and the bell will go at 6 minutes. So over to you, welcome.
Thank you. So Harry, do we have a presentation was sent through to you, PowerPoint? Do we have it on a? Are we able to? My apologies for that. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Rewhilaka toko ingoa. My role is Wairarapa Community Liaison for Wellington Free Ambulance. Just like to, first of all, apologies from Claire that she's unable to make it today. I'm obviously here filling in for her. So we just have a few slides we'd just like to take you through as part of our submission today, and just like to start by thanking you as well for the opportunity to come and speak this afternoon. So Wellington Free Ambulance is the only emergency ambulance service in the Wellington and Wairarapa regions, and we're the only ones in the country who are free. Our 24/7 paramedic service covers all of the Greater Wellington region, so from Cook Strait up to just north of Waikanae on the Kapiti coast, and then across to us here at the summit of Mount Bruce and sort of all the way down and everything in between. Each year we look after 1 in 10 of your friends and family every year, ensuring that we provide the best possible care to all of our patients. So our ambulances start and end their day at a dedicated station. Our staff and vehicles are constantly moving across the region to treat patients and making sure that we're in the right place at the right time to provide the best possible care when help is needed. And although we're known for our ambulances and sort of lights and sirens, by far the largest or the greatest amount of work that we do is in the area of low acuity, which is treating people for things such as chronic pain, illness, and also the frailties of age. So you can see there that across the region, we answer the 111 calls here for the Wellington region.
And where it says across the region there, that is the Greater Wellington region. We answered just over 102,000 calls for help, and we responded to just over 48,000 emergencies. My apologies there, it says in the Wairarapa, but those are actually the stats for the Masterton district. So we treated close to 3,400 patients. Our flight paramedics who are on board the Life Flight rescue helicopter were sent to 30 jobs here, and we also treated 421 people over the phone with our clinical paramedic staff. So our Masterton station is highly utilised. It's one of 9 stations that we have throughout the region. So we have one here in Masterton. We do also have another one in Greytown. And we have a dedicated local team. So many of their team have lived and grown up and and work here in the region. They're very passionate about the area and the work that they do. So here in the Wairarapa we have a manager who oversees all of our operations here. We have recently appointed 2 shift managers who look after the needs of our paramedic staff and the logistics and operations on a day-to-day basis. We have approximately 30 paramedics on staff. We're in need of a couple more, but there's a bit of a shortage worldwide at the moment and getting people into the country as well. But we have approximately 30 paramedics. We have 4 patient transfer officers. We have somebody who's responsible for our logistics and making sure all the stocks and everything are supplied, and of course myself in a new role as community liaison, which is a role specific here to the Wairarapa. So our paramedics are on shift 24/7 and 7 days a week and 365 days a year. As part of our service, some of our team are also specially trained as rescue paramedics. So like Adam and Mike here, they form part of the region's search and rescue teams such as LANSAR, but they are also part of our own rescue teams that are called out whenever help is needed. So they're equipped with specially modified 4x4 vehicles that enable them to go to jobs where ambulances may not be able to go. So the obvious kind of, whether it be on a beach or on a farm or out, further into the bush. However, when need be, these guys will also trek at least, sometimes 4 or 5 hours just to get into somebody to make sure again that we're there when help is needed. We've also just trialled, this is a revolutionary new trial that we're carrying out, and again we're the only ones in the country that are doing this, which is called point of care testing. Point of care testing enables Sam here, who again is one of our local staff. He's an extended care paramedic. They do additional training. So Sam, with these iStat machines that they're called, they can now do blood analysis on the spot with patients, so they can test things such as, I've got my list here because I'm not a clinician, but they can test blood gas analysis, lactate levels, etc. And this supports greater pathways in terms of referral and knowing in terms of that clinical decision making, reducing time for patients. So they can have results in around 2 minutes from those tests right there in the ambulance. So just quickly, our costs. In the last 12 months, these are our costs for running the service here in the Wairarapa. So you can see there, it's just over $10,000 just to fuel our fleets. The figures are up there, I won't go through them all, but we have our consumables and drug costs, and also our linen. We also spend up to close to $12,000 just with oxygen and medical gear supplies as well. So we do receive government funding. We receive approximately 33 million. To run our service is approximately 39 million per year, and so the balance of that we do need to fundraise. We do hope that you'll see the need for the increased costs. We are asking for this from all councils, with it a cost from 95 cents per person to $1 per person. We feel this will make an enormous impact, particularly on keeping our service free, which certainly, in communities that we can create that equity across everybody, that we provide this free service, and also to be able to deliver the best possible care and service that we can here in Wairarapa.
That's just, yeah, okay, thank you, Ruth. Is there any questions that councillors have of Ruth? Councillor Beard.
Ruth, I was fortunate to be there. Do you want to explain to the group about the difference now with AED technology and what's sort of coming in the future in terms of patient outcomes?
Yes, so we just have just brought in some new defibrillators. So we've just signed a contract with ASL. But these new defibrillators are a piece of equipment that, well, first of all, just rather being 14 kgs that the team have to lift and carry into every patient, it's now 7 kg. But this technology enables them to be able to carry out a higher level of ECGs, actually get everything that's going on with somebody's heart. And with that technology, they are able to send that directly through to the hospital, so that that information is there, ready and available at ED when the patient arrives. So there's a lot more technology that we are bringing into our services, that the time, especially in things such as particularly cardiac arrest and heart attack, where it's really time critical. So we can provide more information to hospitals whilst we're on the way.
Thank you, Ruth. Is there any other questions? There appears to be not, so thank you very much. And deliberations are on the 2nd of June in public. We will consider all the submissions we've received, so thanks very much, Ruth.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. So our next submission is on page 265 from Rangatani or Wairarapa, and I see in the agenda it says Te Rau, but we know it's not Te Rau. It's if I welcome Kia ora Amber Craig. I think Amber, you're Deputy Chair of Rangatani.
Aye.
So welcome, and for your presentation you can take. So councillors have read the submission, so you can speak and highlight parts of that as you see appropriate. We have 7 minutes to speak to the submission, 3 minutes for councillors to ask questions, and a bell will ring at 6 minutes. So over to you. Kia ora and welcome.
Thank you. Sorry, just put a little timer on so I know how long.
No, you'll hear a bell from over on the corner.
I want to know before 6 minutes.
When you get 7 minutes, we just give you a minute warning.
Well, kia ora koutou, thank you for having us here. Really what we wanted to talk about, so you have our submission, we do have a couple of extra little bits that we just wanted to highlight for you. So we really want to support the focus of future mokopuna. So stepping up for our mokopuna is something that we at Rangitane or Wairarapa, we in Te Ao Māori, that's everything that we do is for our mokopuna. We are, however, although we did say that we support a lot of stuff, we are just really cautious to have such large scale projects going forward with the LTP that could cause budget blowout. I think you'll see in our submission there are a few reoccurring statements around that. The cost of these projects, although told as initially one cost, the cost to our people and the increases rates for us, our whānau and our wider community is really not tolerable. With COVID-19 and other initiatives, our whānau and the larger community need more relief probably than additional costs. So we know that our whānau is struggling already and it's not really something that we can take on board. Within each of these projects, we would support sustainable projects that have our principles embedded from the beginning, ensuring that any building that is looking to be established is done so as a green building. The giving back to Papatūānuku more than the taking would be our ideal. Co-design is an important thing that not only you'll need to do with our hapu and whānau, but also with our iwi entities. This is bringing us in from the beginning, not having a project formed and then telling us what do you think. That's too late. And every time we have feedback, we can't incorporate that feedback in because it's already too late in that process. So coming on this journey together, I think is really what we think is really key and important. And it also makes sure that it's not a waste of time and ratepayers' money as well in terms of going through those processes. We support more housing for our kaumātua and our seniors in the wider community. However, again, we want to ensure that these whare are warm and dry. So we don't just want cheap housing out there where they'll deteriorate, and then we're actually putting our kaumātua in and worse housing in some cases. But building in sustainable ways, ensuring energy efficiency within the whare, we believe is key. We actually believe that Masterton District Council could contribute to a housing strategy as well that includes accessibility and is safe for our dementia whānau. Some of our older Māori wahine are some of the most undiagnosed cases of dementia. So making sure that you build from that straight away. This ensures that the strategy is accessible for all whānau, helping not just our seniors, but the wider community at large. Affordable housing is also a massive concern for us. Our whānau in the community are being priced out of the market within Masterton. You know, there's a lot of people trying to come over the hill now, now that everyone's worked out how to remote work. And this is actually stopping our future mokopuna from coming back to our whenua. And ensuring that the families and communities that have been living in the Wairarapa, we get to remain here. Climate change in our water. So for us, this is a massive, massive topic. Our view is we serve Papatūānuku, and our awa and our waters are the veins of Papatūānuku. We really call on Masterton District Council to lead the charge in changing this mindset. Our water is not a resource, and we are concerned at the fear-mongering that is going on about climate change, with the potential to support and fund infrastructure projects that will be detrimental to our mokopuna to come. We support the water tanks on homes, so it was really cool to see that in the submission. We really think that that is a low-hanging fruit that councils can help support in that regards to get some action going straight away. We also believe that Indigenous solutions actually needs to be focused on and supported. There's a lot of people that are saying that that's not working, but we've been seeing, not just in New Zealand, but globally, that Indigenous solutions do work. The water resilience strategy, we wanted to kind of make it very clear that Rangitane or Wairarapa do not support the full strategy. We did this because we felt our voice was being compromised too much within the paper. So what we are actually doing is we are writing a position statement that will accompany it to say what we do support in it and what we don't. Because we had also asked, just a quick thing, we had also asked for a Te Ao Māori strategy to be done at the beginning, and we were declined because of funds. But that's where we felt like our Te Ao Māori view was being compromised too much within that paper. Three waters and taumata arawai, as probably for yourselves, is a very concerning thing for us as iwi. And in many forums, it's looking to remove our tino rangatiratanga over the rivers and the water. We're massively concerned about the ways in which they can come onto our marae if they deem that the water's not healthy, and actually the powers that they can have, what they can actually do without our permission. So that's pretty massively concerning. And I think the future, just one last thing, not even going to use 7 minutes, is really just about any future engagements on strategies and LTP. We really believe should be built with tangata whenua from the beginning. And the fact that we only have 7 minutes, I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes back, to talk at today's submission is kind of a highlight of that. If we are TTDT partners, then actually we should be building this together rather than having to put in submissions after the fact. We are tangata whenua, we're not going anywhere. We've been here since the beginning of time, and we'll continue to be here. But the thing that's really important is your decisions impact us massively, and not allowing a voice at these forums is detrimental to our mokopuna to come. And that's really all I have to say.
Kia ora, thank you for that, and I'll open it up for any questions for Amber on the submission or other points that she's raised. There appears to be none. So.
Like, give me a phone call.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming along, and our deliberations will be on the 2nd of June. We will consider all of them. And thank you, and we'll see you this afternoon.
You'll see you today.
Yes. Okay, the next submission is from the theatre company, so I'll see Christine and Robin. It's on page 143 of our agenda. So welcome. So we have 7 minutes. We've received your submission, and you can take it that it has been read. And 7 minutes to present, and we allow 3 minutes for questions from councillors. And the bell will go at 6 minutes, just to give you a minute's notice.
Kia ora. Our theatre company would, in principle, support the building of a civic centre with a large theatre. As far as our theatre company is concerned, at the moment we're running 2 theatres, a smaller 80-seat one, and another one that has an average audience of about 160 to 200 people. So if we were to use the civic centre, that would be too large for us. We would put 10 weeks of rehearsal and time and effort in, because that would be our total max. We'd be doing 1 performance, so we sort of don't operate like that. If the theatre was built so that it was very adaptable, so it could be closed off to have about 150 seats, and even closed off to have 80 for our small repertory theatres, that would work well. But I also am really aware that there have been quite a few large theatres built in the last 20 years in the Masterton area, and none of them are actually suitable for theatre. They've been built as school halls, as large venues that when you go to use it as a theatre, there's light spill from all the windows, it's too wide, the flooring's not suitable to dance on, you can't dance on concrete floor. There haven't been enough wing spaces, there haven't been enough dressing rooms. If you're building a big facility like for Kapahaka festivals and dance schools to use, they all have 250 children. Now ideally you'll need to build another hall or have enough dressing room space to cater for them, because you can't have kids outside in tents in the middle of winter waiting to perform on the stage, which is what happens now. They're either running for miles to dressing rooms, or the Kapahaka festivals are in tents out the back. It would be great to have a venue that can house a big audience plus have a hall or something, and other dressing rooms, facilities available with that. Our other concern is the cost of hireage. If you were running at a cost, our theatre companies are charities, and it's all run by volunteers. We run at a minimal, if a profit, if at all. If it's like the stadium, where schools are required to pay $500 a day, and we would need to hire it for perhaps a week or 2 prior, or a week prior and 2 weeks for the theatre runs, you're looking at $3,500. You're looking at about $10,000 for 3 weeks if you ran it on the same price as the stadium. We couldn't afford 10,000, it would wipe us out for the whole year. So that's a real concern as well. We do also require rehearsal space and storage space for costume, for the costume hire. We make props, we make facilities. At present in Masterton, those facilities we have at Harlequin Theatre and the Majestic Theatre are just so old, they're leaking, they're cold, they're really not suitable for the 21st century. It would be fantastic if Masterton could have a really good theatre base so that we could have those things and use the hall, the theatre as well. Ideally with tiered seating. If you're going to dance on the stage, you have to have a raised stage so that people past the second 2 rows can actually see the feet of the dancers. at the moment at the Cutting Event Centre. They have a raised stage, but if you're having a kapahaka group trying to perform on a modular, locked in together, it's still really wobbly. You need a permanent stage to dance on as a safety issue without lots of steps up to it, because if you have all these kids coming on the stage, Tim, you'll know with your daughters, they're not going to be running upstairs on their point shoes to go and dance on the stage. So it would be really good if you're going to go ahead with this to employ a professional theatre designer who actually we have been in contact with, Dorita Hannah from Auckland, who there's about 4 professional theatre designers in New Zealand. She has done the Blythe Theatre in Otago, she's done Iona College, she's done many, many different spaces for multicultural groups, theatre groups. I would really urge you to work with somebody like that so we get the right thing done without all these problems.
I'll just make some comments. I'm the independent person in this. I don't belong to MTC or anything else, but I've been employed to look at the options. And I looked at both buildings. They're both completely inadequate, badly needed maintenance. So you can't really do much with them. They do need a base. They need somewhere they need a workshop. They need a place for their hire of their costumes, rehearsals. A lot of the things they do, like the children's programs, are very small. You might have 20 odd children performing every holidays. So a lot of the activities are very small, probably under 150, maybe 80, 100. So you need a dedicated little facility. I think that the civic centre issue would be the odd big performance you could use for that. So sort of, I think it needs to be 2 types of facility, a fairly small one, and you can use the big one for it.
Because we are using our facilities monthly with different sorts of productions. We have an audience base per year. In the last year, from this time to now, we've had about 3,500, 4,000 audience, and we have about 85 volunteers performing on and off the stage.
And they got no money.
No money,
Sure.
but it's well used and it's well supported. Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. Thank you. I'll ask if there are any questions of councillors, please. Fraser?
Have you done any pricing in terms of what sort of facility would cost that you require?
We had applied to the Lands Trust for an initial funding to get a project
Concept.
Yeah, with Dorita Hannah. That was actually declined. If we do that ourselves, which we are considering, it would just about wipe out all our finances straight away. But I think that we have
reapplied.
Yeah.
Have you applied to the trust, Masterton Community Trust?
No.
They've actually had money for other things from that trust, and they have still got some left, which we will use. We need a bit more than.
Because the initial concept, that'd be 10,000, then we need another 10 to have it drawn out, written. Yeah, it would be great if we could combine to sort of share resources, but we are in constant use. It would be had to be very organised as to who and when it was available. Yeah.
That's good. Any further questions? There appears to be none. Thank you so much for your presentation, and we will have our public deliberations on the 2nd of June, and we will consider all the submissions that we've received. So thank you very much for presenting. Thank you. So, yeah. Okay. So we have our last presentation, which is from Digital Seniors. It's on page 168, and we have Sarah here, and is it Kathy on Zoom?
Yes, Kathy on Zoom.
Okay, so welcome, Sarah. I think you've heard it's 7 minutes to make your presentation and 3 minutes for questions, and a bell will go at 6 minutes.
Great. Kia ora everybody. I'm Sarah, and I'm the Community Manager for Digital Seniors. And on Zoom, we have our CEO, Kathy Hardinge, who's zooming in from Wellington. Kathy's the founder of Digital Seniors. I just wanted to pass around to everybody. This is some data that I wanted to share. And this just shows our impact that we've made so far across the Wairarapa and also our impact in Masterton. As you can see, we've helped almost 3,000 seniors since we founded, and we've helped them with over 11,000 learning topics. You can also see that some of our main topics that we've helped with have been online banking, and well-being has been a really big one. So you can see that Digital Seniors is not only helping seniors with technology, but also helping improving their quality of life. And Masterton is over half of the support that we've provided across the Wairarapa. Kathy.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm aware that you will have read our submission, but there were some things that we just wanted to highlight like further. So this digital divide that seniors are experiencing, you could say many other generations are as well, but our focus is seniors 65 and over. This digital divide is not going to go away. The problem's not going to go away. It's actually only going to increase as technologies increase, and we can see the rate at which they're increasing. And when I was doing a master's in this, to really understand what the problems were, the best way that we can address this is to understand what each senior needs, rather than trying to put them on something that we're wanting everybody to learn, but not really understand what their issues really are. All seniors' digital inclusion is individualised, and so support helping seniors with technology needs to meet their individual needs, and that's what Digital Seniors is built on. We're also built on the concept of the community coming together to support its seniors. We're the first of its kind in New Zealand. It's only running in the Wairarapa, and what this means is that we have volunteers that are helping seniors to engage with technology, not just to learn basic skills, but to engage with it so that it enables their life in a positive way. The digital engagement is actually really quite important here. This is not something that it's just basic skills for seniors to know how to turn on a computer, how to complete a census and so on. We've now understood that, now that we've been doing this for 3 years, we've now started to understand what seniors really know and need and want. And I think the community in general has seen this, even in lockdown, when the awareness grew that, oh my goodness, seniors who are not on technology aren't able to participate in services. We all have seniors in our lives. We know that many seniors are worried about banks closing, checks, all of that kind of thing. They're the really obvious ones. But behind all of this is actually quite a psychological problem that, in that we're embarrassed. Even young people are embarrassed if they don't know something, if they're not being included, if you're dealing with social isolation, you're not seeing people in your life. Technology is something that can really enable seniors. So in terms of a community, we've got a service here where the community is coming together to help seniors to engage with technology so that they can be more engaged in our communities. So far, we've lifted off the volunteer model really well, and our services include hubs in the 5 districts in the Wairarapa. Our Masterton hub is in the Masterton Library, and that's our biggest hub so far. And these are where seniors come in into the hub for one-on-one coaching. All of our support is individualised, and it's all free. The second one is an online hub on a Wednesday. They can dial in and be entertained by our coaches. We started that in lockdown. The third is we run sessions in retirement villages. And the fourth is something that we're trialing at the moment, which is it's a 6-week coaching program for seniors who are homebound, that can't leave their homes. And we're doing this in partnership with Age Concern. And we're only the 3rd week into our pilot. But you can see we're trying to reach seniors that need us. And you can see from what Sarah has shown you with the data there, the demand is high, and it's growing and growing. Not just from seniors who might be having trouble with their computer, but we're even finding a trend now with seniors that are working that need help.
Kathy, I think that might be 7 minutes. So
That's it.
I'll just
Okay.
time for
I guess,
but if there's something that you want to add in summary, then please do so.
yeah, I guess the summary is that we know that there is a oh God, I can't think of the word. The positive aging strategy. So I couldn't think of the word. We know that the positive aging strategy has all been signed off. We want to work with the positive aging strategy to look at the digital enablement for all the goals. So not just for say one part of it, but there's digital enablement in all of the goals, and Sarah's passing that around now. We have a view that a vision that we're working to, which is a modern connected society. So our next part in our growth plan is to partner with different businesses to understand what are the digital enablement that they need from seniors, and we want to help with that, and we want to build more partnerships so that we're working together. The problem that we have is that our model at the moment is all built on volunteers. It's not a sustainable model, and so we would like to work together with all 3 councils and hopefully achieve a little bit of funding so we can put another person in place to look after all our coaches, and then for Sarah to be working across the different councils to help deliver on your positive aging strategy and work together with different businesses. That's it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Sarah. So I'll just go to council and see if there's any questions. Councillor Nixon, then Councillor Mel.
I was just curious, I noticed that there's quite an emphasis on the users around online banking. So what approaches have you made to banking institutions for support? Because you're really doing their job.
Sorry, I can't hear at my end. Sarah, do you want to pick that up?
Yeah, I can pick that up. So
Thank you.
we've got a 3-phase growth plan, and one of the next phase after councils is approaching businesses such as banks, because I totally agree with you, we are doing their work. So part of our growth strategy is to have funding from banks in the future. We're just doing a lot of work at the moment around the risk of helping seniors with their banking. So once we've got that all in place, then our next step is to approach the banks. Yeah.
Okay, is there any other questions, Councillor Malcolm?
Yes, Sarah, I'm just wondering, how many hours a year is it?
The part-time position, so currently my role is part-time, and the goal, our vision is to have a second part-time person, probably 15, 20 hours a week. Yeah.
Did you work?
I'm currently 25 hours. Yeah.
Any further questions? There is not. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Sarah. And we have our public deliberations on the 2nd of June, and we will consider all the submissions then. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.